Welcome to the Volusia County Council meeting. The meeting will begin in 10 minutes. Welcome to the Volusia County Council meeting. The meeting will begin in 5 minutes. Welcome to the Volusia County Council meeting. The meeting will begin in 2 minutes.
Test, test. Okay, if everybody could find their seat, we'll start in about 1 minute. Okay, good morning. It is 9:03 or 9:04, depending on the clock you're looking at, we will call the September 5th, 2023 Volusia County Council meeting to order. And we have a little bit of a change this morning because we always start off with the invocation, Pledge of Allegiance, and the pastor that is doing the invocation is not here yet. He's on his way, and he's hoping we can delay long enough, but we need to keep going. So in just a minute, I'll ask everybody to stand up, and we'll just have a moment of silence. We'll go into the Pledge of Allegiance. And I just want to let everybody know that if you are a member of a faith group who would like to participate in an invocation, just contact Kay Green, the letter K Green, at volusia.org, and she will get you all set up. Every faith group in Volusia County is welcome to participate. So if you'd like to stand with me now, we'll just have a minute of silence and meditation, and you can pray to yourself or by yourself. Okay. If you turn your attention to the flag, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Carissa, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Santiago. Mr. Dempsey.
Here.
Mr. Johansson.
Here.
Mr. Kent.
Here.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Here.
Mr. Robbins. Mr. Brower.
Here. All right, and we will start our meeting with public participation. We have two speakers, and the first is Paul Richardson.
Morning, Council. My name is Paul Richardson of the Land. I would first like to thank you very much for appointing me to the Cultural Council. After I'm immediately done here, I'm going to go to orientation for that at the Parks Center. I would also like to take this time to turn our thoughts for the people who were affected by Hurricane Idella. My prayers are with them. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for your excellent leadership. Unfortunately, there are some bad actors out there living the philosophy, never let a crisis go to waste. Every hurricane, we have little wannabe tin pot authority and dictators out there saying that we must bend to their socialist ideology and break our free market economy to save the planet. Sadly, the truth is less sexy and doesn't get headlines. The 1896 Cedar Keys hurricane also made landfall in Florida's Big Bend with 125-mile-per-hour winds, the same as Hurricane Idella. I have provided a map of that hurricane, as you can see on their screen. History didn't start yesterday. Hurricanes have been a natural weather phenomenon long before the Industrial Revolution. Florida is actually a swamp, and isn't that the hurricanes have become deadlier, it is that we live in greater numbers. The problem we have been experiencing soon is an energy crisis. If we are serious about going down the road of electric cars, our current power grid won't be enough. I know that they are scary, and this is an unpopular public opinion, but we honestly need to consider nuclear power. Europe is turning back to nuclear after Russia invaded Ukraine. It's pure insanity that nuclear power plants aren't being built as we speak. Technology has come a long way, and nuclear power is safer than it's ever been. I know there was recently a nuclear power plant that exploded in Japan, but that was caused by extreme external conditions and wasn't caused by the actual technology in the power plant itself. And nuclear power, like I said, is safer than it's ever been. We can build safe nuclear power plants here in Florida without any environmental disasters, as long as it's built the code and stuff like that. In conclusion, scaremongering isn't going to work anymore. The doomsday alarmists have been making the same noise for decades. What we need is common sense environmental solutions and advanced technology from a capitalist free market. Fancy ideas that aren't going to help should be rejected, like carbon credits and unrealistic energy production. God bless Volusia County and God bless America.
Thank you. John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beachside. One, with regard to what Mr. Richardson just said, nuclear power plants. I've been reading articles on that. They now have smaller ones, the size of a truck, that can be built quickly. It can be built inexpensively, and they're built underground. So they're fast, easy, and almost no nuclear waste. So that would be something for us to take a look at for the future. Secondly, at the end of last meeting, Mr. Santiago made a comment about the reefs, that we should look into it. On our city commission, we had a gentleman that would not believe anything unless it was printed. So you have copies of an article that says that reefs offshore break the force of the waves. And that would have helped us where I live, the shores, Ponce Inlet, New Smyrna Beach. A lot of damage, a lot of money, a lot of waste, a lot of loss of revenue from tourists. So I'm asking you again to look at the idea of having reefs offshore. Deneen had it where they could be free. The city of Daytona Beach looked into it. They could have them made for $5 million a piece for a mile. Free is a much better price. So I'm asking you to take a look at that. Secondly, the city of Daytona Beach, and I just realized it when I was reading an article, we literally have 2 miles offshore for 57 miles of oceanfront. We literally control the ocean for 2 miles out or 3 miles out. The city of Daytona Beach, I think, has a 1 mile radius out off their shore. What are we doing with that? Because I was thinking they were doing an article on windmills. It's very popular up in New England. If our beach people look out, do we want to see a bunch of windmills? We know we didn't want the oil drilling. Do we want the windmills out there as well? We have a nice shelf. We could put windmills out there, but do we want to do that? So what do we want to do with all that land that's technically in the county as well? So I think we should look at that. And lastly, the transgender thing, that popped up. I was going to come in with a little wig on and a little dress kind of thing. I don't understand the transgender thing. I understand some idiots, I won't say that, some people stepped out of bounds reading in drag in front of little kids. We're very sensitive when you touch our little kids, all right? Whether you say something, whether you do something, whether it's in school, what you're going to teach them. But I don't think any of us have a problem with high school, college. There's a bar down the street or a restaurant that does drag. My neighbors are gay, all right? They told me about it. It popped up in the newspaper. Well, his birthday is tomorrow. So Roger, happy birthday. But we've got to let the world know that we as a community, remember I asked you about the notice for the Jewish people?
Thank you.
That we back them? That we back the transgender and the gay people as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That takes us to item 1, the consent agenda. Council, do you have any of the items that you would like to pull either for comment or for vote? Councilman Reinhardt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item S, just for discussion.
Councilman Kent.
Item J and S, both for a vote.
Is that it? Okay, then let's start with we're going to vote on J and S. If someone would like to make a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda other than J and S,
I'll make a motion to approve the rest.
Second.
makes the Motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda, and Troy Kent makes the second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And consent agenda, other than J&S, passes unanimously 7-0. So let's go to item J. Slosberg Driver Education Program Grant Funds to School. This is right in your
Wheelhouse.
bailiwick, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you mind if I start,
Please.
Chairman? So I'm a huge advocate of driver's ed. I took driver's ed. My children all took driver's ed. My question to staff was, this is it looks like a pass-through from us over to Volusia County Schools in the tune of $230,000. And I just, I asked the question, I just wanted to make sure it was 100%. This was sent out to also like Father Lopez High School, charter schools. I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to take a bite of this apple as well. Those students, those parents are our constituents as well. It just seems like this is just all heading over to Volusia County Schools. And before I voted yes on it, I wanted to make sure that everybody had ample time. Because from what I saw, it looked like July 21st, this went out for RFP. 5 weeks later, we're ready to give it all away to one group.
Yes, sir. So we've reached out to private schools before, but we also do a press release in the News Journal. We put it on our website as well.
Did we reach out to private schools this time, or was that just in the past?
In the past.
Okay. Is there a timeline on this where this has to be done now?
No, sir.
With the money? It just has me thinking a little bit about some of those private schools that, maybe they missed the notice in the paper. Gosh, we've been talking about that lately, haven't we? Missing notices in the paper. I'm okay with giving all of this to Volusia County Schools if no one else wants a bite of the apple. But I think that we should, I would feel more comfortable if we put the brakes on this, asked all of our Volusia County private schools if they wanted to participate, and if they don't, then we come back, we give it all to Volusia County Schools if they're the ones that want it. So I'll hold off on making a motion until I hear from Mr. Santiago.
Okay, Councilman Santiago.
I'm ready for a motion, my friend. If that's what I was going to do, but go for it.
Perfect. Yeah, Council, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and send this back to staff so that they can have an opportunity to reach out to all private and charter schools in Volusia County to see if they want to participate in this very worthy program, and then bring it back to us after we have more information.
And the second is by David Santiago to send this back to staff. George Rechtenwald.
Oh, yes. Just a couple points I want to make. I believe that we'd be happy to send it out again, and that's not a problem. But I also just want to point out that the program is open to students, whether they're in the school or not. So I think it was reported that nearly 40 kids, from not in the attending regular school, in the charter schools, and I believe from the private schools also were in the program. The other thing I'd point out would be I think we have a fund balance. I could check on that, and we might be able to put out a separate solicitation as well. So just pointing that out. Thank you.
Councilman Johansson.
My question was exactly that, I believe, but I was going to ask if the private school students can participate in the public school driver's ed, and I believe the answer to that is yes, and I'm getting a head shake, so thank you.
One of the hurdles I had heard, and again, I think we should always make sure our information is fresh, and they will do that. But the school maintains the fleet of these special cars with the brake that my mother wishes she had, the stop. So some of the smaller schools and private schools don't want to maintain those vehicles or have that kind of insurance. So, but that's been the impediment, I think, in some of those schools from offering it. But we're happy to go back out.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I made the second motion, I just had one question to make sure. If we delay this, possibly, it looks like it might be at least 4 weeks, would it affect the program since school already started? Do we know if it would delay students from starting the program now?
So with most of our contracts, they can request retro pay and be reimbursed for the costs if it's awarded by council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just make the comment as we go to the vote. Councilmember Troy Kent's point as well. We got to make sure now, especially since Florida is a school choice state, right? Which I'm an activist for. We got to make sure that all the resources that we put out for public schools in general now should be included to all participants, for all students. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dempsey.
Yeah, I was just curious, is this also available to homeschool children?
Bless you.
Yes, sir. Our contract has to be open to homeschool, private schools, any student in Volusia County.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that it's available to everybody, but if everybody doesn't know about it, then I'm not comfortable with it. So I think it is, will it take 4 weeks, or can it go back in the next cycle, the next meeting?
It'll take at least 4 weeks.
Okay.
If you're going to advertise it and get it out.
Okay.
And like I say, I'll look at it. I think we might have a fund balance, and I can report that back. So we might be able to do this faster,
Okay.
depending on if there is some money there.
Okay. Jake Johansson.
Yeah, I heard the county manager mention advertise. I'm not too comfortable with that if it goes to the newspapers based on our past experience here. When you say advertised, are we loaded enough that we can reach out to the charter schools and the local schools and the Warner Christians and the Father Lopez, that we don't have to advertise and go at our need?
Well, when we say advertise, for us, it's notice of funding.
Yep.
Availability, so we can reach out directly.
Yeah,
there may be some requirement to put something out with this contract or that money. Right. I don't know for sure as we're sitting here.
Right.
But I think what the council's asking, and I'm receiving, is we want to make sure we're communicating with them, and the way to do that would be some sort of direct contact.
Yep. And I think Chairman, council, and staff too, that from my perspective, and I mentioned this when I first got here, I want to work. Mike, where are you? New community or communications guy. I want to work to make sure that we do everything we can to alert the public on what we're about to do. Yellow public notice signs behind a tree or in overgrown growth and things of that nature aren't cutting it anymore. We need to work to get out the information, and this is one way by going direct instead of just posting in page L20 of the news journal. So thank you very much in advance for taking care of that. We talked about that in my one-on-one, so appreciate it.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we said something about, somebody made the comment about the homeschools. And I know a lot of them already participate in activities with other schools, whether it be sports or whatever the case is. But I know that there's also some co-ops that are out there, but they would fall into that category as well as the homeschoolers, correct? So if they have an arrangement, or that homeschooler student has an arrangement with a particular school, then they'll get notified from that school.
Certainly.
Okay, that's what, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we had 22 non-school board students in the last program.
Okay.
Councilman Kent.
Chairman, and that's great to hear, Dr. Burball, about the 22 students, non-school board students participating in this event. But Chairman, I think you brought up a very valid point, and that was it's a great program as long as you know about it. And I think that staff has heard the message loud and clear that we want to make sure, as Mr. Johansson said, that we get this message pushed out there so that, you know, people know what's available and then they can participate. So I'm pleased to hear that with those co-ops with homeschools, that there's a plan in place to get the message out to anybody and everybody that's coming up to driving age, to help them be better drivers and to help their families with insurance and all of that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the motion on the table by Councilman Kent is to move this to a future council meeting, probably 2 meetings away, seconded by David Santiago, in order to make sure that we have proper public notice, since we are in the midst of an experience where we've all learned just how important public notification is. And I know we'll hear about this later, not today, but a future meeting, that staff is working on some public notification solutions that will help us. But this is really important that the public knows, has every opportunity to know what we're doing. So if there's no other questions, I'll call the vote to postpone. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And that takes us to number S, letter S, approval of amendment number 1 to the agreement for inmate medical services with VitalCore Health. And Matt, did you want to
No, I'll
start?
wait.
Okay.
I'll wait to hear.
Go ahead.
Because it may answer my question.
Good morning, council members, Mr. Chair, staff. Mark Swanson, Director of Public Protection. So item S is on March 21st, 2023, the county awarded a medical contract to VitalCore Health Strategies, LLC. And the agreement was to have a performance bond of 50% of the annual contract amount. The vendor has requested a 10%. And after negotiations with the county, the vendor agreed to supply a bond the amount of $1.5 million, or at 15.24%. And we're seeking approval for the attached amendment 1.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was the original contract price again? And then they're asking for 50%?
I do not have the exact total number, but it was close to $9 million.
9 million?
Yeah,
Okay, so
roughly.
close to 9 million, so 50%, 4.5. And we got them down, or they've got us down to 15%, 1 point. So, and I understand that they took over during a very troubled time. I get that. We had that discussion. I guess my concern is they knew that coming in also, correct? And I don't know if, Mr. Kent, if that was going to be your question, that you saw this to go from, we asked for the 50, they said, well, they asked for 10, and we settled on 15. I just have some reservations there with respect to that. So I'll hear from Mr. Kent first.
Councilman Kent.
Well, Councilman Reinhardt, you took many of the words right out of my mouth, and that was, we had an unfortunate situation, if my memory is correct, where we had a group pull up and leave. We had this group come in, and if my memory is correct, I think it is, it was an increased amount that I wasn't crazy about, but I went along with it. And now we say the performance bond has to be 50%, and they come back at 10%. We go to the negotiating table and come out at 15%. Whoever's doing that negotiation, don't go buy a car from me, okay? We're at 50, they come in at 10, we end at 15. I'm a no on this because of that specifically, Councilman. And I was hoping you were going to do exactly what you did, which was share some light on this because of your time in corrections and being a warden. This service is vitally important. We have to provide it, but why are we taking so much of the risk?
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are more in line to the bond itself. It's a performance bond, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you give me an understanding of what performances are spelled out as in this bond that we would potentially tap into?
Mr. Santiago, the point of this bond is really to cover us in case this contractor doesn't do the work. We have to bring someone in on short notice while we find another contractor. And this bond would really only cover the difference between what we're scheduled to pay this contractor and what we would have to pay someone else. It is the opinion of staff that this 1.5 million would cover us for a sufficient period of time in order for us to obtain, put out another competitive solicitation and obtain another contractor. That is why we ended up, although we were very unhappy about this entire situation, believe me, we had numerous meetings with this vendor. We had numerous meetings where we discussed the fact that they knew this coming in, and we shouldn't even be having this discussion. But unfortunately, this is where we are. They are performing a service already at corrections. And we do believe that even at the reduced amount, it would be sufficient to cover us while we go out and get another vendor if we have to.
Just two follow-up to that. But it may be, I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but I just want to throw out there, it may be that the initial request for 50% was not in line with practical needs. Is that a fair question? Comment?
I will say it's very unusual because we do tend to ask for larger bonds sometimes than perhaps other vendors or other local governments. I think in this particular case, we have had issues with the entire provision of medical services at corrections. Our last contractor, as you know, dropped out at the last minute. And what also makes this complicated, which I don't think we put in the agenda item, when our last contractor sent us a notice that they wished to terminate, they then told us that maybe they would continue, and we continued to have meetings with them to try and get them to continue. And then after wasting about 2 months of our time, decided, nope, after all, we don't want to continue. So we were unfortunately in a very different position than we're normally in when we're obtaining a new vendor. So there's a lot of complications within this particular scenario, which do not normally happen.
My understanding also, when a bond is required in a project, the bidder, I'll just say, typically incorporates that in their cost to do the business, right? And typically would raise the cost to provide the work or whatever it might be in whatever project it is, because they have to pay for the bond, the insurance. Could our practice not be more in line with, to prevent this from happening, saying if you're going to leave, that you have to give us 30, 60, 90 days notice, otherwise they're in breach of contract and we can litigate for the loss that we may have had. Is that an option?
We do have a long lead time on their notice to us. In that case, I believe it's a 6-month notice, and the last contractor did give us the 6-month notice, but then as I said, they continued to meet with us and implied that they were willing to continue, and then ultimately decided not to. So we ended up with a shorter time than normal to do a competitive solicitation.
And I'll just leave with this, Mr. Chair. I understand when performance bonds probably make a good requirement, like when we do our road projects, right? Because they'll build something and it'll look good, when they first do it, and 3 months from later, you may see potholes, right? That makes sense. Other types of agreements, I'm not a big fan of performance bonds. In this particular case, I'll give that an example, because who winds up paying for that bond are the taxpayers, right? Because it's all part of the cost of doing business. So I would rather have, we have a great legal team. I would rather, going forward in the future, have good contracts that protect us in these types of scenarios where not necessarily because we've required a bond for the past 30 years that we should continue. It's just a cost driver. I don't know where we'll lie today on this, but I think staff has already said that a month or whatever it is, the 1.5, I think it might be a lesson learned if they feel that they can do it based on this negotiated number, but reconsider the need for a bond, not on everything just because it's been normal practice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was there a performance bond with the last vendor that left us?
Yes.
There was?
Yes, there was.
What was that? I'm sorry, I am going somewhere with that, I promise.
I believe theirs was at 50%.
They were 50, and then was that paid? Did they pay that 50 or no?
No.
They didn't have to. Okay.
They didn't,
I got
they
you.
didn't do anything wrong. They did terminate.
They
per
did
the
terminate. So, okay. I got you. All right. So, is VitalCore here today? They're not here.
No, they are not.
Okay. And that's forgive the word, a vital question. So, I guess I still have issues with the 15%. Gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I'll wait to hear what the rest of my colleagues say.
Councilman Johansson.
Thank you, Chairman. It sounds like we were in extremis when we made the change to this new service. How much more did that cost us if we didn't execute the bond because they left the contract in accordance with the contract? It sounds like we incurred an additional cost, or was it just an additional time getting the contract let quickly?
In our case, it was time in this last case. I mean, and maybe staff time to push forward that solicitation in a faster manner. But
Okay.
we didn't lose any money or anything of that nature.
Got it. Councilmember Santiago asked a question, and he may have gotten the answer, and I may have missed it, but the performance bond at 50% that this vendor knew was out there, did he wrap that cost into our current contract that he's now asking for a discount on? If I was him, I would have said 50%. I would have added $500 million to the contract, and now he's asking for a discount. It's like when people buy property with a lien and then ask for a lien discount. You're like, you just got the property at a discount, and now you're asking for more of a discount.
I'm sure his cost was in there. I think what he indicated was due to the changing bond market and insurance market, he could not get the 50%. So at least that's what how we ended up at the table. Not that he didn't want to pay for it; it's that he couldn't get bonded for that amount.
I just want to make sure that
because I think
we didn't get charged for it.
Well,
at 50%, and now he only has to pay 15. I want to make sure that they aren't pocketing that difference.
As a member of the RFP selection committee, I did review all of these bids.
Mm-hmm.
There's no line item for what they're charging us for. There's just rates. Everybody bid a rate.
Yeah.
I would assume, as George said, that the vendor had incorporated all expected costs into the rates that they bid. Also, if I may, as a member of the RFP committee, when we reviewed this, we reviewed not just on price. This was an RFP. This was the right vendor at the time for the performance, the qualifications, and they also happened to be, because it was not a straight bid, the lowest cost vendor.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody can answer this, George or Ryan, whoever. If we vote this down today, what are the consequences? What's the next step?
back to the table with this group. Hopefully they won't walk out on us because they do have the care of the inmates in their hands, and they are there, and they have rehired most of the people from the other company, and they are out there performing the service today. So I'm sure we can go back and we can continue. The message will be delivered that 15% is either not acceptable or not acceptable without some sort of give back on their side.
Thank you. Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. How much of an increase did this VitalCore Health Strategies LLC receive compared to the last contract?
Between Centurion, the previous vendor, and VitalCore, when we selected this contract, it was approximately a $2 million increase.
Gotcha.
This was the lowest cost bid. Others would have been more.
Yeah. My memory was that it was a significant amount. Do we currently have the 50% performance bond with them right now?
That's how we got to this point and juncture. We were requesting it, and they did not. And they came back and said,
But with the RFP out there, they knew that it was 50% with the RFP. Okay.
I heard the question, I didn't hear the answer.
They wanted you to repeat, please. They didn't hear it.
Is that mic on?
but yet, yes.
Okay.
That, no, we do not have the bond. That's how we got to this conversation with them and requesting them submit the bond to us. Yes, it was advertised in the RFP at 50%. Yes, they acknowledged that they were absolutely aware of it. And then the discussion came to the problem with them obtaining that bond after the fact due to changes in the bonding market.
Yeah. So, council, they knew going into this eyes wide open what the expectation was. And there's a $2 million increase of taxpayer dollars we have committed. So in my mind, we laid all of our cards out on the table and said, we're going to play fairly. Here we go. No surprises. You want an extra $2 million? We're going to give it to you. I remember 3 or 4 of them in here, for that contract, but none of them here today. That's concerning as well, that they're not here to answer some of these questions. This feels like a change order to me. I know it's not, Mr. Rectenwald, but it feels like it. This is not a good argument for me to win when my constituents ask me about this. This doesn't feel good. We have all talked about, and we are good stewards of our taxpayer money. They knew the agreement. They need to live up to the agreement. And whenever it goes out for bid again, if they want to, change things, then we can talk about it at that point. But also the piece that this might scare them away and they just pack up and leave. I just can't operate like that. I can't operate and make decisions based on fear on what might happen. So I thought they were compensated extremely fairly, and they need to live up to what we talked about. So I'm a hard no on this today, gentlemen.
Councilman Johansson.
Following question, Mr. Chairman, for legal. I get the feeling that the performance bond that you're proposing at 15% is, let's call it acceptable. Is moving forward with contracts, are we going to take a hard look at our performance bonds, or do you just have a template that says 50% or whatever percent? Do we think about everyone and really how much money we need?
They are different. So I'll say that. And actually, this subject has come up, I think, in another area that you guys have asked for us to review, in some of the home building rehab projects where we require, actually, in some cases, up to 3 bonds per project. So, so we are going to look at some of that. To Mr. Santiago's point, it is a cost. That's and you're also, in some cases, limiting in the construction area. Definitely, you would be limiting your pool as to who could even bid, because to get bonded in certain industries is difficult to do. So, given the size of the project, we weigh it with the risk, and one program to help smaller companies come and work for the government is often to keep the project small enough that the risk is small and they don't have to get bonded, or would be bonded for less. And we could look at this too, and I think that's what happened here is in the analysis, when you look at 50% of the overall total, like they said, what you're really going after is just the incremental increase in cost. You have to go back out and do this again. That would be covered. So when they looked at the math, the 15% was definitely going to be able to cover that cost, probably more than cover that cost. And that's another thing. And things in bonding world have changed through the years. We used to have a little bit more of a hammer, but what's increasingly, you've got to prove those costs. It's not just a percentage and you're covered for X. They'll come in and say, well, prove to me what it really cost you extra before we pay on that bond.
So And that's why I'm torn. I believe with Councilmember Kent that 50% was right there in the bid. They knew it was 50%. And it sounds like maybe if we had to rebid this, we wouldn't put 50%. Probably, definitely not now. So
I'm definitely confident that if you guys want to put this off, let us go back and continue the conversation. I don't think for one meeting or two,
right.
they're gonna
I think
out of here. They're working, they're invested in the place.
Yeah.
So let's take a look and see if we can
Thank you,
either
George.
get a better deal or get something back in return.
David Santiago.
I'll defer to Matt Reinhardt, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Santiago. The 15 to 50 percentage is a bit concerning. I mean, I have to side with Mr. Kent. The fact that VitalCore is not here is concerning because we could ask these questions. Because I was going to ask, they said that they couldn't achieve the 50% bond. To what percentage could they achieve? And that might be something in negotiation that I'll leave that alone. That being said, I make a motion to table this until further negotiation can be done because I'm not comfortable with the 15%.
Second. Councilman Reinhardt makes a motion to table this. Let staff go back with VitalCore, and the second was by Vice Chair Robbins. Any other comments or discussion, questions? We do have one member of the public that has asked to speak on this, John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. I know you discuss it, but I don't know whether you understand what you're discussing in terms of the bond. There's an old expression, you know what happens. Well, it did. Okay? They had bid before the bond market changed. There was a disruption. They had every intention of paying. They couldn't get the bond. So the question is what Matt brought up. What is the going rate at this point, considering the bond market? Now, I understand if they go from 50 to 15%, they put aside and padded, or whatever you want to phrase it, the amount into what they had proposed. So if you go from 50 to 15, that difference becomes money in their pocket. Okay? You all lose it, is what you all are saying, which is true. So the question to me is if, and you're going to discuss it, that money, that difference, so let's say 50% is X amount of dollars, 15% is X amount of dollars, you subtract the difference, who gets that difference? And it really should be the county. We're bending, from what I understand, and we should bend, to lower it to 15%. But that profit shouldn't go to them. If you want us, it's a give and take. If you want us to lower to 15% so you can get the bond, then that extra money comes out of the contract. It goes back into the till. Thank you.
Councilman Johansson.
And County Manager, can I ask one more favor when you bring this back, if it doesn't pass today, is that we have a very simple analysis of the bond rate when we bid it and the bond rate when it got accepted, so we can see that difference, because
Yeah, well, look,
a
definitely.
50% bond rate payment might be what 15% pays for.
I just want to clarify, that a lot has to do with their, this is not like buying a bond and there's a bond rate out there. This is, when they say, this is an insurance policy, and we'll take a look at that difference, but it probably had more to do with, either what they're doing in the industry or what this company itself's performance is. And if they're new, for instance, they're going to pay more because they don't have the track record of someone who's been out there and could command a cheaper price.
Well, hopefully their motivation to stay with us is motivation enough to share some of that information with us
That's what we're
next week.
Counting on. Thank you.
Councilman Dempsey.
I just want to make sure that we're still focusing on the quality of care that these inmates are getting. You know, I've been involved in the system for 33 years. Matt, I know you've been there probably equally as long, and I've heard of many scenarios where it comes in ebbs and flows, but where the quality of service is terrible. I mean, people, you know, are booked in and they can't take their prescription medicines with them, and they have to wait sometimes days, if not weeks, to get the prescription medication they need from the in-house infirmary. And so it's just, I just want to make sure that we're not going to sacrifice a new provider who maybe is doing a good job, because I know not too long ago it wasn't quite up to par, in my opinion. So I don't want to lose these people if they're doing a good job just over some money. Okay.
Good points. Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree. I'm not questioning the level of service that the inmates are getting from this company in any way. I don't want that to be out there. I have every confidence in the world when we voted on them to take over our health care for the inmates, that they would perform to the highest level. My question is simply this bond amount, and not to rehash this, that variable from 15 to 50 is one of the biggest concerns. And then the mere fact that we had specific questions that I appreciate, Mr. Swanson, you know, what you gave, and I know you're just getting started, so welcome. That being said, they're here to answer questions that we can ask of our own staff, but they're not, the company is not here for us to ask specific questions related to this bond. And that's what I have the most concern over. So that's why I'm saying what my motion was set to table this. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to table this and allow staff to go back and then report back to us. Carissa, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Dempsey,
Yes.
Mr. Johansson,
Yes.
Mr. Kent,
Yes.
Mr. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins, Mr. Brower.
Yes. So the item S is tabled until further information from the county. And that concludes the consent agenda and brings us to hopefully some good news. 2022 hurricane season beach recovery update. Jessica Fentress.
Good morning. Jessica Fentress, Volusia County Coastal Director. I am here this morning just to give you an update on our hurricane recovery from Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. We have come a long way after Hurricane Nicole and Hurricane Ian, which probably caused the most significant beach erosion that we've experienced in 80 years. To date, we have opened up, we have 107 walkovers open. Some of the information's a little stale just because of timelines to get it on y'all's calendar. We have 107 walkovers open, which means we have opened up 71 walkovers since Hurricane Nicole hit our shoreline. We still have 32 beach access points that remain closed. We have one park that remained closed, which is Edwin Peck Park. I'll give you an update on that at the end of the slide. And we currently have our trades workers out there working on Seabreeze Rec across from the Schnebly Center this week. We hope to get that open this week or next week. I wanted to highlight these two pictures for you because this is the innovation on our trades workers' behalf. We know that our beach access is extremely important to our residents, our visitors, our community, and our businesses. And even though it may not be pretty, we try and provide the access where we can. What you see on the left is a walkover looking west from the beach. That's a walkover our folks in-house rebuilt completely. And then on the right, you see the path to that walkover. You can kind of see in a return section on a seawall that eroded out. What we did is we put split rail in there. You can still walk through there safely. You can still get on the beach safely, and it puts access back open to that community. This is a temporary measure. When we can get our seawalls repaired, then this will go out and will be safe, but the stairs are still going to be permanent. So I wanted to highlight the creative thinking that our trades workers are doing just to try to reopen as much as they can. I've got some updates on our trap bags as well. We got two two major grants from the Florida Department of Environmental Management, a $5 million emergency sand placement grant and $37.7 million for dune nourishment, more of a long-term plan. Some updated numbers on this. We have a total of 42,866 linear feet of trap bags installed, and that equates to just over 4 miles. If you think about it, you run 2 rows, so that's how you cut the number in half if you're doing the math. We still have about 12 properties in New Smyrna, specifically in the Sapphire through Crawford area. And then we have a couple of other properties that we had to skip over due to turtle nests being present. When those nests hatch, then we'll come back in and we'll backfill those holes. $37.7 million, that's focused right now on offloading Rattlesnake Island. We have an excellent partnership with the Florida Inland Navigation District. They're giving us over 1 million cubic yards of sand. We just have to harvest it and place it. This fall, we are going to be going hard on sand placement easements across our coastline. If you want sand from either the Rattlesnake Project or the Army Corps of Engineers dredging project, we need an easement from you. We're also looking at the federal feasibility study. Couple things are going on. We are talking with the Chief Florida Resiliency Officer, Mr. Brooks, and he stated, why don't you go ahead and do what's called a Section 203. Some of you may not have heard the term Section 203. There's a section in the Water Resources Development Act of 1986 that allows you to basically privatize your federal feasibility study. So we are pursuing that avenue right now. We are still working a parallel track with our elected officials to try and get Volusia County as a line item feasibility study with the Army Corps of Engineers in a, I'll call it a natural disaster recovery package that they're doing right now for Hawaii, California, the 22 Florida hurricane season. We are still pursuing that. We will be bringing a memorandum of agreement before you probably in the next couple of months with the Army Corps of Engineers. They have to perform certain tasks when you privatize the feasibility study. That will come before you, just acknowledging that, yes, we agree, we'll let you do this. Once we can get a little bit more narrowed down on the memorandum of agreement with the Corps, we're going to put the request for qualifications out to get a contractor on board so we can start the federal feasibility study. The good news is that if we do get our name listed in a recovery package at the federal level, any money that we have spent so forth will go towards our cost participation on that study anyway. So we'll get credited back for it. The immediate future, we have a lot going on this off season, a lot of recovery projects. I'm going to highlight a couple of them that are larger impacts to our residents, our communities, and our visitors. You'll see Edwin Peck Park permanent repairs on there. We are going to do that this off season. It will happen. We will be back open next spring, summer at Peck Park with the seawall replaced, everything repaired. Sunsplash seawall repair placement is on there as well. And taking some feedback regarding some handicap accessible matting. We are still pursuing the ADA matting, but on top of that, the same company that makes that matting also has vehicular matting that was used in Desert Storm for driving across the sand. So we are engaging those contractors for matting that we can put at some of our temporary ramps like Florida Shores and DeMott, which is a big construction ramp, to reduce our maintenance until we can get our permanent repairs replaced. We're still pursuing federal funding, and we will be going hard for easements this fall and this spring. And I would appreciate anybody to come and join us on the multiple public meetings that we'll have regarding that. I am going to end it at that, but I am available for questions. I can get in the weeds if you want me to. Just let me know.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this question is for you, but if whoever in staff is feels they qualified to answer it, I appreciate it. What have we done from a safety perspective on some of the high-rise buildings that may have been affected by the storm, like foundation issues, or do we have any assessments as to public risk and those things?
That would be a building department under Clay and Clay's building official. And I don't know, there's Clay, so you can answer that.
Good morning, Claire. I'm Director of Growth and Resource Management. What's happening in the building world with the code issues and some of these structures? We're trying to be accommodating to many of these folks to get their things going in a quick and efficient manner. We also are aware that there are some structures that are out there that are creating hazards. So we're working with them to try and get those cleaned up. Obviously the trap bag placement helped out with a lot of preventative measures to help ensure that structures were safe from the tidal influence. What we're doing now is we've already sent out a series of letters to the property owners that have been identified doing work without permits, doing work that is not consistent with their permits, or they haven't initiated anything. The big issue that we're now getting into, because initially everybody wanted to get the seawalls built, get those up there so they could protect, or now they're coming in to rebuild their primary home. And because of where these are located, they're used to the substantial damage requirements that FEMA implements. So that means over a 5-year rolling period, if you spend more than 50% of the value of the structure, not the property, not the pools, not anything else, just the structure, you have to bring it 100% in compliance with current code. So that's where we're working through with the property owners to try and get that done as best we can, understanding that many of them may be financially strapped or still fighting through some of their insurance process.
Just one follow-up, Mr. Chair. I guess my concern, I'll put out there, is I want to make sure that the county or government, local governments, has done everything they can or required to make sure these high-rise, I'm specifically looking at these high-rise facilities, that we've done whatever's required of us. I don't know the specifics to determine whether a building is safe or not safe, or work needs to be done in some period of time. If you can elaborate on our requirements, that'd be helpful.
First and foremost, your chief building official goes out there. We coordinate with all of the chief building officials in Daytona Beach, the Shores, Ponce Inlet, New Smyrna Beach, Ormond Beach, coordinating with them, making sure that we identify the ones that have sustained that damage. So based on that determination, I can tell you that the chief building official for Daytona Beach Shores still has 2 condominiums marked as unsafe and unoccupiable. So we're continuing on to do so. With us in unincorporated, primarily the Wilbur by the Sea area, those are all primarily single-family homes. And so, yes, I'm aware of at least 4 that are uninhabitable and cannot be occupied until they come in for permitting to be able to show that they are in compliance with the building code for minimum safety.
Jessica, you were done. Just a couple of quick questions. Can you update us on the 2 lifeguard stations, Ponce Inlet and Port Orange?
I cannot, but Mr. Corbett is here.
Good morning, council staff. Jim Corbett, Facility Management Director. We have finished the Ponce Inlet Tower, so that's back up and operational. The Dunlawton Tower, we had to demobilize last week due to the storm, but they're finishing up there. I think the final things, we're just getting the electricity and the IT back hooked up, but they can monitor from the station now. The stairs are rebuilt. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, did I hear you correctly when you were talking about the need for sand? Did you say we need to hear from you if you want sand?
Yes, sir. We went through immediately after the storm and got over 300 easements for trap bags. The trap bag easements, we do not need a second easement from you. If you have already signed a trap bag easement for us, that will allow us to pull the trap bags out and give you your sand. Properties that have not provided us an easement, maybe they had a temporary measure in place, maybe they weren't at risk, they just didn't want to yet. If you want sand placed, we are going to need an easement from you. If you've already given us one, that's great. There will be a very specific easement separate from the county easement that we will have to get from property owners, ranging from about Inlet Harbor south to the jetty. And that will be an Army Corps of Engineers easement that allows them to place the dredge spoil on the beach so that we can then harvest it and truck it to private properties for placement. So it's a different agency. They need their own easement. We're gonna do a very detailed door-to-door push on that once we get the land certification from the Corps. I don't anticipate us to start that until probably mid-October because the Corps right now isn't going to solidify their template until the end of the month.
Okay, thank you. So when you say that, you're talking about private homeowners and property owners and cities?
Yes.
So that takes me back to notification. How are we letting them know that they need to get in contact with us?
Direct mailing.
Okay.
You should, whatever address is you get your tax bill at, will be sent a letter notifying you at an easement, because some property owners don't live locally. So wherever they receive their mail for that property, we will be mailing them a letter directly. We'll have, I'm sure we'll have press releases. I'm sure we'll be on the news. I'm sure we're going to be doing public meetings all over the place. We want as many of these easements as possible. So you're going to see my name a lot.
Okay. Very good. It's become clear in the few years that I've been here how the public really depends on ADA ramps and facilities. We have quite a few people that depend on those. How is that going, and is FEMA covering that?
FEMA will cover the ADA ramps. Unfortunately, let me go back to that example picture of a set of stairs. The stairs are really easy to build. You put a couple of posts in the ground, you do some stringers, it's fairly simple. When you connect a walkover to a parking lot and make it ADA accessible, it takes a little bit more skill. And with the deflated profile of our beach, the footprints of these ADA walkovers have changed. A very good example is Winter Haven Park in Ponce Inlet. We had a 100-foot dune. The walkover went due east for 100 feet, and then we started our ADA switchback. With the dune gone, I can't build that walkover in the exact same location it was. I have to retreat that walkover. It's now going to have to go shore parallel against the seawall. That has to be designed by an engineer. This council approved a task assignment in August for all of our ADA ramp walkovers with DMC. It was August 1st meeting. And because of the expedited permitting with the state, as soon as these can be designed, we're going to be able to go to construction. I've been having conversations with the deputy director of DEP and the program manager of the Coastal Construction Control Line with DEP, and I have expressed the need for us to maintain the emergency final order stipulations that allow us to continue construction during turtle season. So hopefully as soon as these projects have been designed and they're ready, we'll go to bid, it'll be publicly solicited, and then we'll be able to start building them back again. But they will be covered by FEMA, yes, sir.
Okay. And that was my last question. You and staff in general worked really hard and successfully in getting DEP to allow us to repair seawalls, do all these repairs during turtle season. How's that going?
It's going really well. You see recovery in a lot of areas, and then you, as all of you up there know, you start making personal relationships for some of these property owners who you start learning their stories, and they just financially can't cut it. When they thought their insurance was going to cover something, their insurance is not covering it. Yeah. Some of them are selling. I've seen some new names on some properties. You do see a lot of properties that are in the middle of their repairs, and that's what we got very nervous about last week when the hurricane was coming in, is if you're smack dab in the middle of your repair and you have half a seawall, you are vulnerable. But then you see some big, beautiful seawalls, and they, everybody's nervous and says it's going to be ugly and hideous. They look really good. I encourage you to drive down Daytona Beach shores north of Dunlawton, and there's some really pretty seawalls out there. The rock revetments that went in between the St. Kitts and Frank Rendon Park, you would never know there's rock under that sand. It looks great. The residents have planted it. You see a lot of recovery, but then, as Mr. Irving said, you go down to Wilbur by the Sea and you just see some single-family property owners who are struggling. And it's like any recovery effort.
Yes. And we only have 3 more months to go of peak hurricane season. Councilman Hanson.
Thank you, Chairman. As this thing you mentioned, especially in Wilbur by the Sea, but you get more and more emails. We got one this morning of people that have done mitigating things next to people that haven't yet, and so their neighbors, or in this particular case, their neighbors, kind of the county. There's gaps. Are we still looking at the big stuff to the point where we can't really look at these little gaps that would help onesies, twosies? And if so, when we're talking to the homeowners, are we giving them other opportunities for solutions that don't involve us putting a trap bag or doing something to help them?
So we cannot put a trap bag if we do not have an easement. It's basically modifying someone's property. There was a stat in there, we pulled over 12 tons of debris off our beaches.
Right.
And you walk down Wilbur and you still see half of the houses looking like doll houses with a roof hanging over the ground. We can't clean that up unless someone gives us an easement. And I've got a situation in Daytona Beach Shores very specifically where there's a vacant lot that you cannot reach the people, the owners. It goes through 3 different shell organizations in Canada before you finally find the owner of the property. If the county does not come in, if you do not provide the county with an easement and we can't come in and put a trap bag in place, then the onus is on the property owner to maintain the property.
Right. So then the opportunity or the option is, when people call us, is to protect your own property and
protect your own property and make friends with your neighbors. Get to know the people that own the property next to you so that they'll answer your call when you call them. It's a whole lot easier to get an easement from a resident, a property owner, if their neighbor's encouraging them to get it,
Sure.
versus the government knocking on the door asking nicely. And that's the biggest push that we've gotten is, specifically in Ponce Inlet, the community has come together and they've done their own kind of grassroots education amongst the property owners on, you really should give the county an easement. This isn't like a land grab. It expires.
All right. Thank you, Jesse.
Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Fentress, thank you for giving us this report today, and the pictures are a big plus. And Mr. Rechtenwald, I just want to say, Ms. Fentress rightfully gave the credit to those tradesmen and women that are thinking outside of the box, and like that picture on the right, still making this beach access point accessible for our residents, because many of our residents access the beach this way. Some are like me, who are a little cranky about having to pay to get on the beach when you already feel like you're paying for it in your taxes, so you don't drive on the beach. And this is how you get on the beach. And I'm pleased to see that 105 out of 141 walkovers have been fixed, and 16 out of 17 coastal parks. So that's great news. But now here comes my question. What's the timeline? We're about 11 months from this storm that we had. What's our timeline for those last, I think, 36 walkovers in the one coastal park?
Coastal Park is Edwin Peck Park. We will go under construction this off season. We've got the solicitation package. I believe it's out on the street. If it hasn't gone out, it should be going out very shortly. The walkovers, I'm anticipating 2024, and we've got an excellent relationship. I can't express my appreciation enough to the DEP, because they understand that we need to recover, and that we need to recover on a get it done as quick as possible timeline because of the upcoming hurricane seasons, and they are helping to expedite permits and repairs. Walkovers, we've got 32 of them. I anticipate them to go out to bid probably this early 2024.
Okay.
Which means construction, and we'll be doing a rolling opening this summer. But some of the walkovers that you approved for construction or to go to design on August 1st, we have temporary measures in place. Just like east of the Schnebly Rec Center they're working on right now, we're putting a set of stairs in. So there will be access. It's not going to be ADA access, but access onto the beach for that entire driftwood beachside neighborhood community.
And there's no doubt in my mind that many of those walkovers are open because of that innovative thinking, that the picture you showed us, but the comments you said about the trades workers thinking outside of the box and helping to get these open with the most common sense approach that they can. My hope is that we reach out to the city of Ormond Beach, because they have the Indy Romano Beachfront Park and you still can't access their stairs. You've got to walk over to Millsap. And I loved what you said. You said the stairs are an easy fix for our guys and girls. Let's let Ormond know the stairs are an easy fix. You know, I know they own it, so, you know, they're responsible for it. But, you know, one of the most wildly popular, and in my opinion, the best beachfront park in the state of Florida, you know, and it's not being able to completely be used because of that limited access. Thank you very much.
If I can, I will say that I have spoken to Ormond, and I've spoken to a couple of other municipalities. The county is very fortunate that we have trades workers on staff. Some of these municipalities just do not have the personnel with the skills that are staffed day-to-day basis. So that may be a little excuse for them, but that's why we're able to respond so quickly.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Santiago, I'll let him go first if that's okay.
Councilman Santiago.
I just had an urgent, I had to disagree with you, Troy, that I don't think I've ever seen you cranky. I just wanted to put that on the record, so.
Anyways, there was a specific question that was asked. The Boylston Beach access?
Yes.
The status on that?
The Boylston Beach approach, for those of you that may not know where it's located, it is just south of the Bel Air Publix. It was under construction for non-storm related issues. The restroom needed to be redone. The ramp was ineffective. It was an eyesore to Daytona Beach. It was a beautification measure. Well, the hurricane hit smack dab in the middle of the construction project, and a retaining wall, we thought we just needed a retaining wall, turned into, well, the retaining wall failed and now we need a new seawall. And then the seawall on the north side that held the bathroom up was functioning pre-storm, and now post-storm it has since failed as well. There will be a change order reaching the dais probably in the next month for some hurricane-related damages.
It's a scope increase, correct? That's not a change order. That's a
scope increase.
Scope increase, yes, correct.
I like that word.
Sorry.
I like that verbiage.
We now have to replace a seawall that we were previously not permitted to replace under prior state statutes.
And one other quick question. Mr. Irvin spoke about the 4 uninhabitable homes in Wilbur, and Mr. Johansson asked the one question with respect to the email that we all got. I know that we're trying to work with the individual homeowners as much as possible with respect to the insurance. I know that there is, at what point do we step in and say, okay, we need to do something or not? I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm not trying to sound insensitive in any way, but I think it was just said on the dais is that other homes are at risk and are vulnerable as a result of their adjacent property. So
we're reaching out to those property owners. If they're not showing any response, then we have the process through the contractor licensing construction appeal to order demolition.
And then we place the lien on the property.
For the cost of that.
Okay. All right. So that answers that question.
And that, again, you know, that is not our preferred option.
No, absolutely.
So we do
want to
work
try
with
to
the
work
property
with them, and I know
owners.
they're still.
But it's probably going to be at least a 3 to 6 month period, you know, from today before we start seeing any of those coming through.
Okay. And Jessica, one other quick question. Of the 32 walkovers that you said there are still, is it 32? How many of your walkovers are still?
There's
36?
Yes.
Okay. I was off by a few.
But so we also, like Winter Haven Park has 2 walkovers. You had the
I gotcha.
stairs and then you had the
okay,
ADA.
so that can be addressed at the same time. Are many of those ADA that you did you mention that? Okay, so that's an issue where our tradesmen couldn't necessarily perform that work, that we need to contract that out, correct?
And some of them are tied to failed seawalls as well.
Okay, there's the other.
So
okay.
I can't in good faith build a walkover over a failed seawall if it's not safe for the public.
Okay.
We're getting creative, and some of the more creative approaches have not been put in place yet. But yes.
in light of everything that has happened with our storms, gentlemen, I have to say, we have the best of the best right here in front of us, with respect to what she's been able to do so far. So I commend you for an excellent job. Well done. Thank you.
You have an excellent team that work
Well,
for the county.
See, and she puts it right back to that.
The
Thank
trades
you.
workers are worth their weight in gold.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you very much. And thank you, staff, for a great presentation. I move to accept the update.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the update by David Santiago, second by Troy Kent. Before I call the vote, I want to piggyback on what Matt said. I've watched you in public. I've watched you here. You have performed, you and your team have performed flawlessly in a really difficult situation. It amazes me the amount of information, facts that you have on the tip of your tongue in public when you're asked really hard questions. And I think our residents have really gained a lot of trust in Coastal Division because of that. So I join him, and I'm sure with the rest of the council, in thanking you for the hard work that you have put in this year. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept this report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries 7-0. That takes us to item 3, contract with Halifax Paving, Inc. for the LPGA Boulevard and Clyde Morris intersection improvements.
Good morning, Tad Casebeer, County Engineer. This is a contract with Halifax for the improvements that are proposed for LPGA and Clyde Morris. We're going to be adding a northbound left turn lane on Clyde Morris, an eastbound left turn lane on LPGA, and a westbound right turn lane on LPGA. Includes signal work that would be needed, as well as the extension of the box culvert for LPGA canal. Any
Questions for staff?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Troy Kent, second by David Santiago. If there's no other comment, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Contract is approved, 7-0. Item 4, easement sale and purchase agreement with Bridgepoint, Inc. for stormwater ponds for the Williamson Boulevard widening project. You're on.
Yes, sir. Again, Tad Casebeer, County Engineer. This is an agreement with the adjacent property owner to purchase an easement under which they will construct a joint use pond. They'll also design and permit it as required. It'll take the stormwater that we have coming off of the widening from Williamson from Strickland Range at the south end to Hand Avenue at the north end. It also includes maintenance in perpetuity. So $2 million of the $2.25 million that the county will be paying is funded by the state. The rest is coming from proportionate fair share.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Is there a motion?
Move approval.
That was you, Mr. Kent?
It was.
Motion to approve by Troy Kent, second by David Santiago. There's no comment. All in favor say aye.
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 Did you have a comment?
I was just going to say very briefly that I really liked that in perpetuity, the
Yes.
property owner is going to be responsible
No,
for
I
this.
love that.
Good work.
Thank you.
Love that.
So again, I think the vote was 7-0, but just to make sure, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the easement sale is passed 7-0. Item 5. Ordinance 2023-033, ordinance amending Chapter 72 of the Code of Ordinance to provide limitations on continuances for items heard by the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission. Clay Irvin.
Yes, sir. Clay Irvin, Director of Growth and Resource Management. Back in May, y'all provided direction to staff to go and amend our procedural requirements for the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission. Specifically was the continuation of items for an undue time period. And so what you're seeing here is we've created kind of two different systems. One for variances, where there is, again, a one-time continuance that can be allowed for up to 4 months. Then the other items, such as special exceptions, rezoning, land use amendments, ordinance changes, can be extended for a period of no more than 3 months one time. So it's consistent with your direction to be more expedient, more efficient, and it's coming to you with a unanimous recommendation from the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission. If there's any questions, we're available.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Clay, for this. The only thing that stood out for me is that help me understand the 4 months. Why the need for 4 months? What was the rationale behind that?
So, Paulo Soria, Senior Assistant County Attorney. So we differentiate between 4 months and 3 months because we are, variances are quasi-judicial items. We're subject to a state-imposed shot clock. So within 180 days of receiving a complete application, we need a final determination from, whatever agency that is going to make that decision. So for variances, the PLDRC is your final stop. So unless it gets appealed, that's why there's additional time for a variance and still make that shot clock. That's the only difference. For all the others, special exceptions, rezonings, land use items, that needs to come before this council. That's usually a 1 month gap. So by the time PLDRC hears it, it should appear in front of you, within a month, if not more. So that gives us a little bit more buffer to meet that 180-day shot clock requirement pursuant to statute.
Perfect. So it sounds like you made it the most efficient that you could given the parameters. So, Mr. Chair, I'll just make a comment and we'll go to motion. But I just want to say another good win for Volusia. This council has provided a lot of red tape removal, tax decreases. We are on a path that I think we all discussed, when we wanted to achieve these seats. And great day for Volusia, removing red tape for Volusia County residents. So with that, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve ordinance number 2023-33.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Santiago, a second by Councilman Reinhardt. Questions or comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0 and the ordinance is updated. Item 6, a special exception for a car wash on Osteen Mixed Use Village zone property located on State Road 415, County Council District 5, Clay Irvin. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, so after you have your opening statement, I will ask for ex parte and go from there.
Thank you very much. Clay Irvin, Director of Growth and Resource Management. The Osteen Mixed Use Village is a zoning classification that's specific for the Osteen local plan. This was approved approximately in 2007 as a way to help steward the growth that was occurring in that area, and especially along 415. The part of it is that it was intended to be a walkable, vertical and horizontally mixed use area. And so we have zoning classifications that allow this use in by special exception. It went through your staff's review. Staff did recommend denial to the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission. There were 2 variances that had to be obtained in order for this special exception to make it here. So if they did not get the variances, then the special exception itself could not be approved. Those were pertaining to landscape buffers along the front and a maximum setback. As I said, this specific zoning classification has a maximum building setback. It's trying to design it so that it's building forward, more pedestrian friendly, those types of things. So in order for them to accommodate their drive aisle for the car wash, they had to have the building further back and encroach into this landscape buffer that's required for about 90 feet along the frontage. This gives you the site plan that was submitted as part of the special exception. Again, this is a conceptual site plan to reflect what they hope to build. They would, if this is approved, then they would come back in with more detailed site plans, and that would be approved by your development review committee. One of the concerns that we did have is that there are areas that have been identified as being within the FEMA floodplain, but it does not have a known base flood elevation. So it's, those of you who are familiar with that, it's zoned AE. So therefore, We had some concerns from that perspective, but they've agreed that that can be addressed through part of the final site engineering. When it went to the PLDRC, the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission members reviewed what staff had put in its report, and they 5-1 approved the variances for the landscape buffer and the maximum setback, and subsequently approved the special exception. There are conditions in there that are talking about the hours of activity, in other words, when it can be open, and it talks about the parking, buffers, etc. So it's coming to you now with a recommendation of approval from your Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission based on the approval of their 2 variances to allow for this to go forward with it. There was public comment. A gentleman who owns property adjacent to it did not speak against it, was just there to clarify what was going on in regards for accessibility. And at that point, it was clarified that he could do what he wants to do with his property, which is a similar commercially designated area within the Osteen Mixed Use Village, and that access to his site would not be impeded because of this. So the applicant is here, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, before I start calling on council members, does anybody have any ex parte that they need to declare?
No.
Nothing up and down the, okay, Councilman Santiago.
Yeah, Clay, 2 questions. The one dissenting vote on PLDRC, who was it, and did they give any explanation?
It was Mr. Bender. He had concerns with the construction in the floodplain.
Or was that before them to decide at that particular time? Is that part of it?
No, sir. It was part of the staff's comments. He identified that as the primary reason he felt that the special exception was not appropriate.
Okay. And my second question is, since this is in the Osteen,
Osteen local plan area.
Does Deltona have to, based on that agreement, opine on this?
No, sir. Not on this one. That would be primarily for land use amendments.
Changes.
Right. That's where both governments have the right to review and approve or deny.
Because this is a variance or special exception. Okay. Thank you.
Vice Chair Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. Clay, one or 2 quick questions. I like the direction this is going. What do we have to do, and I support this, what do we have to do to further lessen the regulations or amendments to the local plan to allow more of this stuff by right and not have to go through all this stuff? Unnecessary.
There's 2 different things. One, we are working through, as you directed us when you did your goal setting, to examine the amount of uses that we have identified as special exceptions and see if they could be allowed by right or by a conditional use, which would be a staff approval and less time. We're working through that, but again, like I said, we have over 50 zoning classifications. We're getting there. The other thing is that the Osteen local plan has very specific standards that dictate this walkable mixed-use development. If you would like us to do so, we could contact the city of Deltona and ask them if they want us to reopen the Osteen local plan.
Thank you. It just seems like, I forget we have 10 or 11 local plans. As the cities start coming out, things do change. I think it's more like a living kind of document, but also, too, it's acting as a wet blanket, strangling, in my opinion, a lot of folks from adapting to the variables that are getting thrown at them. So I appreciate the direction you're going with it. Thanks.
Clay, just to kind of continue that line of reasoning, when I read the local plan, it's obvious that the original thought was to have this be a walkable community. It's pretty rural here, and then you read that the plan was to have frontage roads. So that seems like a horrible use of the land if the owners have to build a road off of 415.
The concept was to limit the amount of driveways on 415 so it could move freer and utilize basically alleyways and cross-access easements to allow for travel between different parcels.
Okay. With that in mind, I would agree with Mr. Robbins that it's probably time to begin a conversation with Deltona and look at this local plan again to make it make sense in the current environment. One question for the applicant. The biggest question I had, I think, was asked at PLDRC, I think by Stony Sixma, about it's car wash, a lot of water. There's a lake there. There's a wetland. The answer was interesting. I believe you said that there was 85% reuse of the water.
Yeah, correct, Mr. Chair. So for the record, Nika Hosseini with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, here in DeLand. You're correct. So it is a pretty state-of-the-art car wash system where about 85% of the water that's being used to wash those cars is being put back into a reuse system, and it's being reused over and over again. It's an incredibly efficient system. We also, stayed incredibly far away, more than we needed to, from the wetland buffer, and tried. I think we went through the entire alphabet to try to create just a concept plan, not engineered. So once we engineer it, it'll be a lot more efficient. But just to have a plan that really makes sense for that area. It's not a walkable area. Going back to the reasoning with respect to the local plan and how difficult it is, it's very difficult to meet those standards. Not only do you have those standards, but you also have those standards that conflict with other areas of the code, which is what we discovered as we were going through this process. So we're trying to kind of have a very efficient system, less impervious surface, doing all the things by the book that our clients wanted to do to have a more environmentally friendly car wash. But then, they wanted a outdoor hardscape area because a local plan says you need to have an area for people to hang around at. You also needed walkability, all these different factors that doesn't really make sense for an area like this or for a car wash that is permitted through a special exception process. So we try to kind of go through all of that, and through the engineering process, we will kind of hone in on what we need to do to make sure we're not impacting the floodplain, and if we are, we're taking those precautionary measures and we're making sure that we're meeting all the other environmental standards in the code.
Thank you. That was a pretty thorough answer. It sounds like a lot more efficient than Vice Chair Robbins out washing all of his vehicles, his boat, his RV with a hose running for 4 hours. So, okay, David Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And right now I support this request, but I kind of echo and maybe add to some of the comments that have been said regarding the plan. I have to confess that I was part of this monstrosity back in 2004, I think, when I was on the city commission, when we created this plan, which, if you remember history, then there was a lot of litigation between the counties and cities, in particular Deltona at that time. There wasn't much dialogue. There was just a lot of legal action on both sides at that time. But I think we've gotten past that. I'm an advocate of each city has their own elected body that's held accountable to whatever decisions they make. I'm not a fan of extra barriers or entry points to these property owners. We've all discussed on removing red tape. And I'm a proponent of eliminating these types of plans, in particular this one, because it will never turn out to be what we've kind of said we wanted to see there. So let governing bodies govern, let property owners be property owners. We have development standards that are already in place on multiple levels, and I would like to see this council pursue and talk to Deltona on eliminating this Osteen overlay or JPA, whatever they called it these days. But just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carissa, we had no request from the public to speak. Is there a motion on the table then?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Second.
Councilman Santiago motions to approve. Second is by Vice Chair Robbins. Pardon me? It was you? Second was by Matt Reinhardt.
I mean, Danny, like, that's
It's his district. I thought he would.
I know.
You would allow him.
No,
Okay. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, one more question, Mr. Chair. Is your applicant a plan to annex?
No.
Good. Okay. Staff, Mr. Irvin, you're done? Okay. Motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Car wash is approved, 7-0.
Well, for your time. Appreciate it.
Item 7, budget resolution and resolution authorizing imposition of special assessment against non-public hospitals in accordance with the county's local provider participation fund ordinance and the state's Medicaid direct payment program.
Good morning, Laura Coleman, Assistant County Attorney. That's quite a title, I know. The rest of it won't be very long. Before you today is a resolution proposing an amendment to a special assessment rate that is assessed against certain local area hospitals. This is a kind of a new program both for the state and for the county. Last year, the county opted into the state's relatively new Medicaid managed care directed payment program. In some, there's a bit of a shortfall for healthcare providers that provide care to residents, to our residents, and all of those throughout the state, really, who use the Medicaid program. It's estimated to be about a 60% coverage, so about a 40% shortfall when all is said and done. In order to address that, the state adopted this directed payment program that I mentioned earlier a couple years ago, and that program really allows counties to make a special assessment against certain hospitals, then to take those funds, those assessment fees, put them into a local provider fund that you all created last year as council, to put them into that fund, make an intergovernmental transfer, and draw down additional federal Medicaid monies that would not otherwise be available to us. So this is a way we take money from the hospitals, we pass it through to the state government, draw down additional federal monies, and then make a disbursement back out to those same hospitals that paid the assessment in the first place. Again, it's a way that this would not otherwise be available to us without this program. This is not a tax on property owners. This is not something that is made across the board to all residents. This is just an assessment against the hospitals. It also is not a cost to the county. The ordinance that was adopted last year does have a requirement that each year you all choose to opt in and participate into the state's plan for that state's fiscal year. You have to pass a resolution that does so. We did so last year, and based on some discrepancy or the difference between the state's and the county's fiscal years, we need to amend that rate if you all would like to participate in the state program this year, and that's what's before you.
Councilman Santiago.
Which hospitals are currently assessed in Volusia County?
That is a great question. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6. The Advent Health facilities, the UF Halifax facility in Deltona, and Select Specialty Hospital in Daytona Beach.
Let me ask a better question.
Sure.
I think maybe it'll help.
Why those?
Which ones are not assessed?
So there are criteria that make these hospitals eligible to be assessed, and basically everyone that is eligible to be assessed is assessed. So these are non-public hospitals that meet certain criteria.
Yeah, you may not be ready to answer this question. Can you name the ones that are not assessed? Because
I don't have a list of every hospital that we have in the county, so I can't tell you who's not. I can give you the names of the ones that are. I will also tell you that we have representatives both from Halifax Hospital and Advent here today in the audience. I'm sure they'd also be happy to speak to that.
We know for sure that Halifax main campus, Daytona, Port Orange, is not assessed.
Where do these, and maybe the hospitals can answer this question, but where, everything, there's nothing free, right?
Sure.
Someone pays everything, and you hear the word free. How are these funds collected within the hospitals or assessed? I don't know if you can answer that or somebody else.
Are you asking how the assessment rate is determined?
No.
Like what we're basing it on?
Where do they get the money from?
That I don't know that I could tell you. I can tell you how it was calculated.
I'll give the scenario. If I go to Halifax in Daytona, I get a Tylenol, it's $5. If I go to Halifax in Deltona, do I pay $5.25 because I'm paying this assessed fee to send back? I don't know.
We don't represent the hospital, so I'm not exactly sure how they're coming up with it, but obviously it's coming from patient revenues or other revenues, but they plan on the return that comes from this The net additional revenues is federal Medicaid. In total, the contribution that the hospitals are making
Exceeds
today
the collection, I get it.
is a percentage, probably about half, give or take, of what they're going to ultimately receive. So even if they were taking it from patient revenues or cost savings or wherever they're getting this money from, they're going to get it back and more.
And then there lies the next question. Where is the returned revenue in additional federal Medicaid match? Are there requirements on where specifically that has to be spent? So in other words, would they strictly just go to a hospital, let's say like Halifax, Daytona, and not Halifax, Deltona, or Advent, Ormond?
It's my understanding, Advent Ormond is part of this assessment. All Advent hospitals.
The actual drawdown dollars is what I'm talking about.
They all pay and then they all receive. Halifax and Daytona is a public hospital. If you look at the chart up there, there is a program called the IGT payment program. Halifax is eligible to participate directly in this program. It's because these other hospitals are non-public that they have to have Volusia County involved. I do not know for certain whether Halifax actually does that, but this is a chart that was provided by the state or the consultants, one of the two. It is a program that's available. It's very similar to, at the county, we participated in a program called PEMT, which is a supplemental Medicaid program for our ambulance service. The rollout of that program started with direct Medicaid, which we were able to do a direct government contribution. We sign a form for certified public expenditures. That program works differently for managed care organizations, where we actually have to contribute, and then the state draws down federal funds for us, and then we get the money back. It's not necessarily one-to-one. That's actually one of the cruxes of this program, that there's no guarantee that if Advent DeLand pays $3 million, that they're going to get that exact $3 million back plus the federal. There is some give and take, but in total, the hospitals all benefit from this program.
And I guess just to kind of put a basis for my questioning is that I get it's a state program, right? We're participating in, and it's just sending money up, and they multiply it or whatever they add to it, it comes back. I think it's silly, but anyway. I'm not opposed to the program. I was just inquiring to make sure that everyone in the public that is a Medicaid recipient, it's dispersed fairly. And I don't know the answer to that. So I know I got some heads bobbing down here. I don't know who they are, but that's really where my line of questioning is. And if it's of a program that needs to be improved, then maybe that's part of our advocacy work in the legislature. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll add that I can speak on behalf of the PEMT program from the county's perspective, because they do believe they operate quite similarly. Medicaid transports for our ambulance service pay at $136 or $190, far below the cost to actually transport. Programs like these help supplement the gap in the cost of care for Medicaid, because the state Medicaid rate have not been adjusted for a very long time for ambulance. Hospitals maybe have been, don't know, I don't work for the hospitals, but it's known that Medicaid is the lowest payer of all payers.
Are the hospitals involved willing participants? Are there any asking us not to do this?
They are all willing participants. Actually, this program came into being last year at the request of Advent Health.
Okay. Are you Colleen Ernst? Would you walked all the way down here. Would you like to
Hi, yes, I'm Colleen Ernst. I am a technical consultant for the hospitals on this program. So we have been working with local governments around the state of Florida since 2021 to help the non-public hospitals gain access to this additional reimbursement for Medicaid services. So it was explained very well. But the reason that we're here and the reason that we have to go through this lengthy process is because Florida is in a position where hospitals are only reimbursed about 60 cents per dollar of cost for Medicaid care. So if they're performing a $10,000 leg amputation, they're only receiving about $6,000 in reimbursement, leaving that $4,000 reimbursement gap. And that's just a product of how much money is going in general revenue toward Medicaid and how much federal money is coming in as match. So that leaves a question of, if there's federal money that's available, if it's left on the table, how can the hospitals help access that money? What can they do to find a way to bring in those dollars that otherwise aren't available? And this program is what allows them to access those funds. So there were a couple questions. How exactly is this money allocated? Well, it's allocated based on the Medicaid volumes. So what hospitals see as a result of this is a reimbursement increase. So it's a uniform percent reimbursement increase. So instead of getting, let's say, 60%, maybe everyone will get 70%, but it's 70% of cost. So it tracks how much they're spending on Medicaid care. And that's what's responsible for the allocation. So really, it helps hospitals sustain and maybe even increase their Medicaid volumes because their shortfall is narrowing as they're bringing in these funds. There was also a question of, is this going to show up on a patient's bill? How are hospitals getting the money for this? And the answer is true, that the hospitals do build in this anticipated return. So actually, when they're able to build that in, that gives them that ability. But there's a prohibition in the ordinance, section 110-790, that explicitly prohibits hospitals from having a surcharge or passing on the cost to the patients. And so it has to come from revenues elsewhere. It will not show up on your bill or on any patient.
Councilman Santiago.
I move to approve resolution.
Okay.
Second that.
I have a motion to approve by David Santiago, second by Matt Reinhardt. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And resolution is passed 7-0. Thank you very much for that explanation. Takes us to item 8, renewal of workers' compensation and liability policies.
Good morning, Chairman, County Council, staff. Dana Page Pender, Human Resources. And I'm here today requesting approval of renewal of our workers' compensation and liability policies for both the county and Votran. The liability policies include excess liability policies, which help mitigate the potential impacts of large claims on our self-insurance program. While there were some increases in premiums, there were also some decreases, resulting in an overall increase of $15,000 of 4.45% over last year. And with me today are Charles Spencer, our risk manager, and Justin Anselmo from Brown & Brown, our broker of record, in case you have specific questions about these renewals.
Councilman Santiago.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. I feel like I'm talking a lot. I think the answer is yes. Really are. I know. These are kind of my wheelhouse. I did a lot of insurance stuff. What's been our experience rate? Have we been improving? First, I'll just say that on the workers' compensation side, how is our internal checks and balances or program, our experience rate rising, lowering, stable?
Charles Spencer, risk manager for the county. Yes, it's actually going down.
Good. Thank you for the brief answer. I love that. And then on the liability side, the excess liability, historically, in the county of Volusia, and you may or may not know this, the second part of this question, how often have we had to tap into that historically or ever? The excess part.
We have had to tap into it several times. I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't take much to hit $1 million or $500,000 these days in an accident.
Is that where our limit? That's when it types in after $1 million.
$500,000.
$500,000. That's pretty low.
They have made payments before. Yes, they have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve workers' comp renewal, Johansson.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilman Johansson, and the second was by, was that Troy Kent? Second by Councilman Kent. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And policy is passed 7-0. Item 9, Medicaid match costs for hospital districts.
Good morning.
Chairman, members of council, Carmen Hall, Community Assistance Director. I do have a 2-slide PowerPoint if you guys would like to go through that. All right. So this specific item is requesting a approval to divide the annual Medicaid contribution. So the Medicaid contribution, it is a requirement by state statute. That statute also allows us to divide this responsibility amongst any special taxing districts. So in 2021, council approved a 4-year phased plan to divide this responsibility amongst the districts based on Medicaid enrollment on the actual zip code in the taxing districts. So we are in year 3 of this plan, and if you go to the next slide, you can see the division of responsibility of the $7.8 million. Questions?
Questions, anyone? Vice Chair Robbins.
A motion to approve.
Chair Robbins makes a motion to approve the Medicaid match costs. And second was by Matt Reinhardt. Not to open a can of worms, Mr. Dyer, but you've won the court case for 3 years ago for West Volusia. Do you anticipate having to sue again for the next year and the current year?
Well, we did just receive the check I did last week for year 1. We did file a lawsuit some time ago for year 2, and this is year 3. So we're in the middle of that litigation. We have the really, in our opinion, the same issues, so we're hoping we can move through that as quickly as possible, where a lawsuit for year 3 is not necessary, what you're approving now.
Yes, question from Councilman Santiago.
Are we able to see the public, the expenditures that the West Volusia Hospital is doing on legal costs for this?
Yeah, we do have that information based on their agendas, so that's something I can share.
Yeah, I would, Councilman, I would like to have a presentation on the costs of that litigation, because the taxpayers should be aware of the money they're wasting.
If that was a motion, Chairman, if that was a motion, I'll second that for him.
I'll make that motion. You have a presentation on the expenditures then.
Okay. Let's deal with that before we finalize the main motion, and I'll just add to that something that I would like to know. At some point, I'm wondering when it becomes illogical to eliminate the taxing authority of West Volusia, and I think that goes to the state, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we discussed it a few meetings ago, right? I think staff is still researching options for us to discuss. I think there were maybe 3 or 4 options or something like that.
Yeah, so you have 3 hospital taxing districts. 2 have been working with us, paying their share. Because the default mechanism, if they don't exist, the county bears 100% of the cost. So the dispute has just been with the West Volusia district, which is a portion of this cost, a significant portion of this cost. So hopefully we can dispense with the second-year litigation and get back on track. I think what has happened so far has been unfortunate.
Okay. So the Councilman Johansson.
I believe, though, we the council have asked staff to come up with options for manipulating or otherwise getting rid of these districts, yes? Or making it one being one of the options? I think that's coming back to us at some point.
We sent out a memo to you on July 26th in response to council's previous question on what those options are. I think the thought process was that focus on the pending litigation, see the outcome of that. We now know we recovered half of what we had been seeking so far first year. Then council can revisit it.
Copy. Thank you.
That was our understanding of our direction.
Okay. So, before we deal with the main motion on item 9, we have this motion on the floor to have staff bring back a report on cost and expenses for all of the districts or West Volusia?
The litigation that we've been involved with the West Volusia Hospital Authority
Okay.
on both.
And
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure.
that's okay.
On both sides. So the taxpayers, the point is for the taxpayers to publicly see the expenditure in this, what I think is a waste of money.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Just briefly, I sent an email to Mr. Dyer about this. Is this something where we can go after attorney fees because we won this?
Unfortunately, no, under this mechanism.
We'll chat about that later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. All in favor of the motion on the floor for the staff to report back to us on litigation fees, expenses, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 7-0. We do have a motion on the floor to accept the Medicaid match cost. Any other discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 7-0. Item 10, 11 o'clock, appointments to the Business Incubator Advisory Board. You need 4 nominations for appointment for a 2-year term expiring August 5th, 2025.
Correct. And any council member can make this nomination. And you do have a number of applicants that have applied, as well as 2 incumbents.
Okay,
Make a motion?
Matt Reinhardt was up first. That's okay.
I'll make a motion for Edith Shelley.
Matt,
Nomination of Edith Shelley, sorry.
Councilman Reinhardt nominates Edith Shelley. David Santiago.
I'd like to nominate Jason Leslie.
Mr. Santiago nominates Jason Leslie. Mr. Kent.
I will nominate William Sanchez.
William Sanchez is nominated by Councilman Kent. And I would nominate Lou Paris. And I think that's the 4 that we need, unless someone else had an alternative.
Motion to approve the 4 that were just mentioned.
Motion to approve these 4 nominees by Councilman Kent, second by Vice Chair Robbins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nominations carries 7-0. Item 11, at-large and District 1 appointments to the Library Advisory Board.
So Mr. Dempsey has 2 applicants to choose from, of Deborah and Carol. And Mr. Johansson has several other applicants to choose from.
And Councilman Johansson?
Well, the right thing to do would be to take somebody from Mr. Dempsey's district and limit his choice. But I'd like to nominate who's his choice? Deb Du Bois. I'll do Deborah Grabowski, please.
Deborah. Oh, Grabowski. Okay. Thank you. I saw 2 Deborahs there.
I know. I didn't want to.
And Mr. Dempsey.
Deborah Du Bois.
Deborah Du Bois?
Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 nominations, Deborah Du Bois and Deborah Grabowski. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Pardon, you had a question?
Motion or? I'll make the motion to approve the 2 that were selected.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Matt Reinhardt makes a motion to approve the two nominees. Troy Kent makes a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nominations are approved 7-0.
Good catch, Councilman Reinhardt. Good catch.
And at 11:04, that concludes all the items, and we move to comments from the public. And we have one request to speak by John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. Going back to the two things I spoke about earlier, Mr. Santiago, the reason why I brought up your name is because you seemed interested at the end of the last meeting. And what happened is several years ago, I'd been fighting with the city on the widening of LPGA. And our rep on the MPO, Bob Gilliland, said there was no need to do so until I brought it to the county and Heather Post looked into it. And sure enough, the ball started getting rolling and it's getting done. Then they wanted to put a roundabout on ISB and A1A, which would back up the traffic. We have horrendous problems at that intersection now, and it would only make it worse. Jim Chisholm said, I'm the only person who opposed it. Billy Wheeler looked into it. Sure enough, she had a meeting. 92 people showed up and 90 people opposed it. So I'm asking and I'm hoping that you'll take an interest in the reefs and its an impact on the upland, and that you might look into it and find out that it would stop the compression of the waves. Right, that's why I brought it up. Secondly, on the transgender, I don't understand it. I think there's 49 genders now. It's way above my pay grade. Don't understand it. I know two. That's it, male, female. But it is an issue. And I was at a meeting, and a woman said that her grandchild is transitioning, and the family is moving out of state because they're afraid of what's happening. There was an article in the paper, a woman's moving out of state because she's afraid of what's happening. I don't see it. I don't see the prejudice. I don't see any backlash against gays, transgenders, or any of that stuff. So I'm asking you to make a public statement, a proclamation like we did with the other one, that everyone is welcome in Volusia County. There is no issue here. It's going to affect our tourism. It'll affect the way people think of Florida. I don't know if you remember the elections years ago. We were the butt of jokes, the hanging chads and the whole 9 yards. It lasted forever. So I'm asking you to think about it, that everyone is welcome here in Volusia County, and there is no issue. Thank you.
Thank you. County Manager.
Yes, sir. Main thing I had to report, of course, Friday, a report was sent out to council regarding the proposed fuel farm up in Ormond. I hope you all got that. And also we're reporting that you had asked about us meeting with officials, and I have a meeting set up with the FEC Railroad later this week. So start conversations about options.
Okay. County Attorney?
Yes, since we started this meeting, got a report that the 5th District Court of Appeal ruled in favor of the county on one of the two pending legal challenges on the short-term rental ordinance, the Vacation Rental Home Alliance of Volusia and Stephen Murray case. So I'll send that out to you, but want to give a big thank you to Kevin Bledsoe, who's hiding in the back, for all of his continued good work.
Okay, thank you. And we will begin with council members. David Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to staff and legal department too, the fuel depot update, I guess the report that came out, very thorough. So thank you very much. I appreciate the work, and the public ought to know the time that's being spent here is, yes, exactly, considerable, and we're not taking it lightly. the directions that we gave them. So thank you to staff. On the artificial reefs, yeah, I think it's great. I ran with that. I think this council should consider the expanding of the artificial reefs, but also maybe a little bit more science and update and studies on whether or not it can help with some of the storm damage, right? We keep spending money, federal, local, and levels on replacing sand and fixing damage. So we got to start thinking differently, because we keep putting sand on the beach and it keeps taking it back, right? I'll make that in the form of a motion to direct staff to consider options to increasing our artificial reef program and giving us information on the benefits of storm mitigation.
Have a presentation from staff. Is that what
Perfect.
we're-
Yes, sir.
Second?
Okay. Motion by David Santiago to direct staff to bring back a report on artificial reefs and shoreline stabilization, seconded by Troy Kent. George Rectenwall.
Yeah, as you are aware, we've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers, and there'll be, we're trying to get funded and get in the queue for what they call their 203 study. And that study looks at all the alternatives for shoreline protection. And that will, I think, be the definitive report in the future, because without that, you're not going to get any kind of funding from the Army Corps of Engineers. And without that kind of funding, I mean, you're talking to be able to do for shoreline protection type reefs, you know, that's major league money, hundreds of millions. So it's going to be a federal project when it comes. So I just will say that, I mean, we can put together what we've seen around the country or these type of things. But as far as having any definitive scientific data, that'll have to come in the future after, if we can get the Army Corps to go ahead and support and do that 203 study.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right, George. I think that study is out there. I think maybe from my motivation, and I don't know about the rest of the council, we have this reef program, right, that we're doing artificial. We've done some in the past.
Oh, yeah, we have a reef program, and that's a fishing reef program. Those are out there. They come in as close as, I think there's a mile near shore, some reefs out there. But the intent of those reefs are for fish attraction in the fishing industry.
Yeah, and the reason I say that, I don't know unless we ask, is are there options out there that we can modify our existing reef program that also have some ancillary benefits to this? I don't know the answer to that, but it's kind of sort of along those lines.
I would have to, let me get back to you on that question, and that may be what we can report. Again, one's a fish attraction. One is, you know, you're talking about something that's meant to break waves. And so, you know, not being a ocean scientist, I'll have to defer to them. But I will say we're very fortunate. Jessica is probably as knowledgeable as anyone around on a lot of that. I mean, she is a background in coastal engineering. She is a coastal engineer. So, you know, I'll talk to her and find out where else we can get some information and bring it in. It's definitely something to look at. But I just want to make it clear that they are two different programs. And that other program is ongoing, too, by the way. Takes time to gather up the materials and then take them out and place them. And they're under a plan that she operates as well.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor to direct staff to bring back this information on reefs and shoreline stabilization. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Last item, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up to our last special meeting that we had when we eliminated the communications sales tax. And part of that, I don't know if we gave complete clarity to staff, so I wanted to bring it up for discussion on the the resolution idea. I know resolutions are basically just statements, right? There's no meat to it, but I mean, as county council, we are leaders in our community, right? So we're the highest governing body locally, and I think encouraging our cities to follow suit, nothing wrong with that. They can get creative with their budgets, but I wanted to bring back again the idea of proposing a resolution to encourage cities to eliminate the communication sales tax also for their following budget year.
I'll second that, and they don't have to do it, but this way, we put it out there for them.
Correct.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Santiago, second by Troy Kent, for a resolution to encourage the cities to also eliminate the communications tax. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And that takes us to Councilman Don Dempsey.
I have nothing.
And that takes us to Councilman Johansson.
Thank you, Chairman. Two items today. First of all, last week before the hurricane scare, I was at the Florida Housing Coalition Conference, and there were some great things brought out there. I learned a little bit, learned a lot. One of the things that I found interesting was there was an overall air at the conference that municipalities and counties were not quick to build affordable housing, and by golly, the coalition and the state legislature did a great job at making sure we do that in the future by the Live Local Act. It's like there weren't elected officials at the conference almost. I was like, really? So I got an opportunity to talk to a few folks, and this the fuel farm issue brought up a pleasant conversation with a few folks about how the Live Local Act can open up where we develop. But if you think about it, the Live Local Act will allow people to develop without really coming to us in industrial areas. So how would it be if we developed in an industrial area such as where Bear Creek is, and then found out our hands were tied when it came to a fuel farm or a fiberglass manufacturing facility, which we've run into since I've been up here. And it's a conversation a lot of people hadn't thought of, that we may be putting families in workforce housing in industrial areas that could perceived or actually put them in harm in the future. So it was a great conversation, and I've had that conversation with Clay Irvin offline, just as a kind of a, have we thought through this? Not that we have choices, and he's coming up with some solutions on how to at least inform. So I appreciate that, Clay. And then another thing that's come really kind of bothered me about the fuel farm thing is it kind of went, I don't want to say nuclear, but it went high order pretty quick, which I understand. But those are times where I would hope that we as district guys and the chairman and I as an at-large rep, and local municipalities would reach out to us and have candid conversations about what's going on, and that throwing each other under the bus via email and social media doesn't become the norm. But we got to collaborate to solve problems like this. We need to work together. We don't need to spend hours pointing at, well, go to the county, well, it was the city, well, this, well, that. It's time for us to kind of get our acts together and come up with solutions collaboratively. So I urge everybody sitting up here with us, and I know most of us do, to reach out to the elected officials in the municipalities that we represent, and make sure that we are collaborating to solve problems together. I'm not saying that we're not doing it, but that was one where a lot of phone calls should have been made instead of emails and social media blasts. So I appreciate your help with that. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Troy Kent.
Chairman and Council, I had nothing until Mike Dyer spoke, but now I just have one brief one. Mike Dyer, you and your team, and Mr. Bledsoe, since he's here, I just want to publicly tell you great work on that short-term rental piece with the District Court of Appeal. I'm very pleased to hear this. I know many of my constituents are very pleased to hear it as well. So keep the hot streak going, Mike. Thank you.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have one thing with respect to the fuel farm. I know it was going to be brought up today. I was actually surprised there weren't people here with respect to that. But on September 12th, the Volusia League of Cities, speaking of cities in collaboration, is doing a Volusia County delegation roundtable event with our state legislators in South Daytona for the purpose of discussing the upcoming legislative session. Volusia County League of Cities offered us the opportunity to ask questions of our state legislatures ahead of time. It's on the, anyways, I'm sorry. We were asked to present our question in advance, which I took the opportunity to do so. My question simply was related to the proposed fuel farm in Ormond Beach. And even though the suggested facility is not in my district, I simply wanted to ask the question of our legislation if there was any way of finding a reasonable solution or potential appropriation to seek a possible different location of this facility. In that question, I also stressed the concerns of our citizens as well as many dioceses. I'll be interested to hear their response. So if you're not going to attend, I would encourage you to do so. Thank you for the assistance on that in preparation to that. So I'll be interested to hear what they have to say, but that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Question to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did they confirm who from the delegation is going to be in attendance?
It did. Right now, all of our Volusia County delegation will be in attendance. So that's Representative Leak, Representative Tremont, Representative Barnaby. Well, you're asking me to, Tom Wright, Senator Wright, yes.
I know the names.
Okay.
I think something to highlight there, whoever participates, is the fact that our hands are also tied based on legislation they recently passed on any changes, significant changes until 2024. So it's something that they have to address on the state level also. So that's of high importance.
That's a great question. Maybe that we have until, I believe, 5 p.m. today to submit those questions. So if you have further questions you want, and then they'll give you the opportunity to either address it to one specific representative or senator or to the group as a whole. But the questions had to be submitted by today. So, and I believe it's to the League of Cities, and they'll coordinate the question through there. In other words, it won't, my understanding of the way that it will go is they get the questions, they do their presentation, they'll answer the questions that they were submitted ahead of time, but there is no one in back and forth, kind of like the appropriations thing is. It won't be that way, so.
Yeah, if someone, I won't be in attendance. I'll be in Washington, D.C. that week, but if someone wants to address that, I just want to figure that our delegation needs to know that our hands are tied on certain things because of legislation that was recently passed.
Is that it?
I'm done.
Okay,
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Vice Chair Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. Been watching the news. I can kind of see where this country or our administration in Washington is going with a couple things. I'm going to ask council to see what their thoughts on are in regards to reviewing our COVID policy from a few years ago when we went through this, just to analyze what we've been through, what we've done, the policies that we enacted, and what we can change I want to continue, and I'll go on record to keep Volusia County, just like Florida, a safe haven for our residents, for our workers to stay open, to give them the ball and let it be in their court when it comes to their lives. Everybody, I believe, is essential to their own household. I don't believe in this essential worker stuff. Everybody is essential to their family and their family unit and in their life, and I want to protect that. So what I'd be asking for, and I'll put it in a motion, to compare what we're doing here locally to the state legislation that was enacted, and to see if there's anything else that we can add that maybe was left out. So I'll make that motion. I won't repeat it, but
The motion is. So your motion is to compare local action with the state and federal action as it applies to COVID-19 shutdowns?
anything else, Chair, that we can do to protect our citizens from that sort of government overreach.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
And Chair, just to add to that specifically, we have an ordinance 86-671, which is a COVID-19 administrative leave policy. It addresses some administrative leave. I'd like to look at that, include that as well when it comes to additional time off in the event something like that happens. Moving on, there's a couple other.
Can we deal with that motion?
Good. Good.
Mike, did you hear the end of what? Because this is going to go to you. It sounds like.
We'll work with HR and information. My understanding is 86-711. I may have the number slightly wrong. Leave policy is expired, so there's nothing in effect.
Okay.
In my understanding, on the first motion you passed, like us to put together some information for council, whether it be a presentation or.
There is no existing COVID policy anymore. Everything is gone. Everything is, and everything we did followed the state. So, but we can put that together if you'd like to see it. But all that came and went with the state.
Anything we could do to further protect ourselves, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. I agree with that. It sounds like what you're really asking to make us a sanctuary county from this from federal overreach. Any other comment on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Chair, a couple other things. There's a golf cart ordinance 118-111, operational limits. I'd like to look at that as well as 118-2 with all-terrain vehicles, operation on dirt roads. I'd like to give our people in unincorporated Volusia a little bit more freedom in terms of that. I know it's a recreational activity, and if it's done in a safe manner, there's state statutes, careless driving and reckless driving, that our law enforcement could use in the event that we go outside. You know, there's violations there. But I know the golf cart operation is highly successful in New Smyrna Beach, and also too, it takes cars off our roads. It takes cars off our, downtown areas and stuff like that. I know Ormond by the Sea is great. Bethune Beach, and any of that stuff where they can do it under 35 miles an hour. I'd like to try to open that stuff up for folks to use. And then two, hours of work in operation. I know last council, Ms. Post had proposed an ordinance to adjust the work times. I'm seeing the tempo of this council in regards to working versus not working, and I think I can safely say that would rather have people working than not working, and it's getting so hard to get employees, workers. I see that the ordinance section 50-476, it was adopted or amended on May 16th of 23. It was a carryover from Ms. Post. I have never gotten a complaint, period, on this. It was something that was possibly specific to her district at one time. to this day, after 3 years, I've never heard a complaint of this. I see that Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. I see that verbiage in there. I would either like to make it consistent with the Monday through Friday, or maybe adjust it to 8 a.m. because a lot of these folks, they got to take workers whenever they can to build a house or to do a service like this, even if we go 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But I want people working. I want to afford them that opportunity versus government dependency. And other than that, I think we're good.
You're proposing to bring those as a motion to address those ordinances?
Yeah, I'll make that motion to possible look into amendment to amend the time on that ordinance section 50-476 and possibly I see another like ordinance which is 22-87 or is that? No, 72-703. I'm sorry, hours of work.
I'll second that.
Tell me the two ordinances again, 72-703.
And then the main one was 50-476. There's a little overlap there between the two.
So you would like staff to bring back a proposal to amend
Yeah, possible.
those for time?
Yeah, just amendment, just for the time on Saturday and Sunday, because, I mean, for blue-collar workers, those are work days as well. And I'd like to
Okay.
accommodate. I don't know a work day that starts at 10 a.m.
Okay. I think Councilman Johansson had a question.
I do. Also, you rattle off the one about ATVs and side-by-sides, unincorporated dirt roads, very successful in New Smyrna Beach. Are we talking about non-DMV approved vehicles, or are we talking about DMV approved vehicles?
These, per statute, state statute 316-2123, subsection 1, Florida state statute allows all-terrain vehicles operation upon unpaved roadways, and then there's a parentheses in our code that says shall not be applicable in Volusia County. So we're the redheaded stepchild in this department here. I was just going to make a suggestion to keep it consistent with state statute and allow folks to use their ATVs within the speed limit on our dirt roads.
And was that one of the motions that we just talked about, or was it all about work?
I think so.
It was earlier. It was earlier.
Okay, I'd like to add that to the motion if it wasn't in the original motion about work, or make it a second motion.
I'll accept that as the second of the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. So Vice Chair Robbins made the motion. You're providing the second?
Yes.
David Santiago?
Maybe and that's it here.
Okay.
I just want
Go ahead. You had a question, Councilman
more of a
Santiago.
comment, Mr. Chair, to what Danny's proposing, and I don't know what protocol. I know we can throw things out there and say, hey, we'd like to direct staff to look into this and that. I feel confident enough in this body that if, and again, correct me procedurally, right? That if there's a member of this council that wants to amend an ordinance and put something forward and work with staff and create the amendment that you want to propose and bring forward to this body, to bring it to us, and then let us, decide it. It doesn't always have to be a staff-driven process from the perspective that we just say, go work on this and bring it back. If I'll just use you as an example, Danny, if you want to repeal the section in our ordinance that says except Volusia County, then I don't know why procedurally a member of this body couldn't just say, hey, this is ordinance number such and such. I want to change it and remove this line and let it come forward through the process for us to vote on and debate it. So,
Well, just by way of background on that, that any two of you can make a motion second, add something to the agenda. The chair can add something to the agenda under the powers of the charter. So historically, if you've wanted something to come back in the agenda item, you've directed us to do that. There are plenty of things that George will bring forward through operational necessity he needs to put on. But this way, we're not getting ahead of the other 6 members of council on an item. So that's why historically at the end of this meeting, usually during your comments is when you've given that direction. Or maybe beforehand you prompted us, hey, can you raise this issue during your report, manager or attorney, and then you give us direction.
Yeah, let me expand on that. And I get it, right? I want to be maybe a little bit more specific. So we gave consensus here for something to go back that Danny proposed. And I would be okay with Danny then going to staff and saying, this is what the amendment I'm proposing to our ordinance, and this is what comes forward to us. We don't have to do all of this staff analysis work. No, Danny proposes this based on guidance from this board to eliminate this or to add this. And then we decide.
Yeah, I think the difference is like any of you individually can ask for information. Happens all the time. We give information to you. The only rule that we've historically has followed for many years is that we share it with everybody. So not one council member is getting information and others are excluded. And because of that information we give you, you may come back and say, hey, Mr. Reckenwald sent out this report. I believe we should bring back a proposed ordinance doing X, Y, Z. It's kind of the way we set it up. But any of you, you don't have to make a motion to ask for information or ask a question.
I'm just trying to maybe streamline it a little bit more and let us do the debate and decide. I think I'm trying to take a little work off your shoulders, I think is where I'm going on staff. But just want to see the thought process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. And Councilman Santiago, I get exactly where you're going with this. And I'm sure as we all did, but I read our rules before our first meeting, frontwards and back, and then frontwards again. That's why I was ready to hit the ground running on day one and, get rocking and rolling with some things because I knew the process. The process is either George puts it on the agenda or the chairman puts it on the agenda, or we got to talk about it here and get that second person to agree and then get 4 of us to agree. And I get the part about if there aren't 4 that at least want to talk about it, then we're just wasting time of having it on the agenda. But that's why I said, any of you bring up anything, because that first meeting I brought up 3 things. And there was like some crickets there for a little bit, a little bothered. It's like, come on, I want to talk about these things and I need some help from somebody. And the chair can't make a motion or second a motion. And a couple of the ideas he agreed with. And, I ended up getting a second on the motion, but that's when I publicly said, if it's important to you, it's important to me. And I'll second it. You bring it up, I'll second it. And I hope that we get support to say, hey, if that's where we're going, we want to talk about it, let's do that. And I think because, not to jinx anything, but I think we work really well together. And this is getting more streamlined and better. Staff today, couple presentations, they realize we can read. They send us the presentation. We've previewed it. We've asked questions for our manager, for our attorney. So they're not here for 45, 55, 75, 95 minutes with a presentation that we already read. So that process is getting streamlined. So I see exactly what you're saying. And all I'm saying is I'm going to second it because I want us to be able to talk about it, even if I'm going to not agree with it. So if we do that, we just have to, the thing a lot of people don't like to talk about is we can sort of do anything we want. As long as we get 4 of us to agree to make the rule change on how these meetings are run, we can make those changes. So we can do that. The only cautionary piece I have on this is I do think the 7 of us work really well together. But you get somebody that is... we could be here every meeting with a list of things if we change that rule, is all I'm saying. It could become problematic. I'll leave it alone now.
Did you just say you were seconding something?
No.
Okay. Because
I will. Did you make a motion?
I was no. We do have a motion on the floor that we haven't voted on yet from Vice Chair Robbins to consider 72-703 and 50-476 as it applies to time working on Saturdays and Sundays. All in favor of bringing that back, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I believe that motion was amended to also include looking at ATVs and golf carts on dirt roads as well.
Okay. That's part of the same motion?
Correct.
Is that good for you? Okay. The votes still apply? All right. You're done? Okay. Okay. We have till noon. Okay. I just had a couple of questions about the fuel farm as well. Our zoning there currently is S1 or S2?
I'll have to have Clay, it's heavy industrial. I2.
I2, that's what I meant. I2. On the report that you sent us about Burt Harris and Senate Bill 250, it says that we cannot change land development or comp plans. What about zoning? Because that would affect it.
Senate Bill 250 also applies to zoning.
So we have to wait till 2024.
Yes, sir.
Unless they change that law, which they could.
Do you see any willingness from the local legislature?
I haven't heard anything. There was, you and I talked a little bit about it. I think there was some confusion early on from jurisdictions about whether they were even subject to the restriction because of that 100-mile calculation. But yeah, I mean, that could be something that council asks for, brings up.
Okay.
I mean, you still have the Burt J. Harris issue, but it deals with the Senate Bill.
So that was not part of our letter to the legislation to ask them to change SB 250?
No, but I know you're going to be putting together your legislative platform, so now's the time if you want to be talking about that.
Okay.
And Chairman,
Go ahead.
We have a legislator that vehemently opposes the project anyhow, so,
I think they all do.
yeah. Oh, that's right, they all did. So, yeah, we're
Yeah, I
gonna
think
have to push it.
I think they've all come alongside of us and said that they oppose it. I'm just not sure what kind of action that transfers to, because we need, ultimately we need action. Right now, we're in the process of, Clay, has there, I know until yesterday I haven't heard of any, but is there anything I don't know of an application for a permit been issued?
No, sir. Not
Requested.
since the
Okay.
Friday update. Nothing's changed.
Okay. I know we've reached out to Belvedere.
Mhm.
Has there been any productive conversations with them about an alternate location or?
Not with Belvedere yet. Belvedere did, not through their engineering firm, came in and asked some of the basic type questions of a pre-application meeting of what things we would want to look at as far as a traffic study. But as far as any other locations, that hasn't started yet. And really, it needs to start with the landowner, which is not Belvedere.
Right.
So,
David Santiago.
On that topic, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think I want to remind the council, and legal guide me if I'm stepping wrong. We have to be careful with the comment we make from this dais because people have rights. I think certainly some of this dialogue can happen behind the scenes, Mr. Chair, and I've just everything we say up here puts us in the crosshairs potentially of what we said and how it affects our capability from a legal perspective. I get the positions that we're in. If we want to win, we got to be smart. And how you got to be smart? You got to be smart legally because people have rights. And staff has been giving us good updates in writing within their boundaries. Don, you know this, you're an attorney. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but everything I say can and will be used against me. right? And I know it's not a criminal case, but everything we say will be used against us. We just have to be careful and strategic and make sure that nobody's rights are violated in this process, because it could be a big cost to everyone. It could be a loss, and it could be a financial burden to the city. So I respect everybody's comments, but work through staff, please. That's my question as a request as an individual member. Work through staff, not in the public discord.
I would disagree with the last statement that you just made, and to not do it in the public. The public needs to know what we're doing for them. They're upset about this. They're afraid. They should be afraid. I don't know if you've looked at the safety record of Grupo Mexico. It's dismal. And I know at the last meeting, you actually told me I was pandering to the public because I was pretty definite about that we should step in and do something. It's not pandering. It's how I perceive our job of protecting the public. They also have property rights. We have thousands of people that live around there that have property rights, that are concerned that their rights and their property values and their public safety is in jeopardy. And I think they're right. And so I want them to hear from us that we're taking this seriously and that we are working. That's not pandering. That's telling the public that we're representing them. So before I go on, Danny Robbins?
I just want to add, Chair, your concerns are valid, okay? All the concerns, we have not shown, in my opinion, and pay attention to that three words, in my opinion, nobody up here has brushed this off. The public knows. We've had a special meeting. There's emails daily. But I'll go back to your concerns are valid. Those are all of our concerns, in my opinion. So when you said how I perceive it, that's a good start. But getting back to Mr. Santiago, I also believe he is correct as well, because if you want to make a statement, or anybody want to make a statement, use the letter I, in my opinion, or I believe this. Then that alleviates the county and puts it on the individual. Because this can and will go south very quickly. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But we have to represent, in my opinion, everybody equally. We are all concerned, and I believe we all are keeping this a top priority. I just would like also to be a little bit more cautious and maybe just change the verbiage a little bit on when we put something out and make it singular. That way, we're not exposing the council or other members of the community to unnecessary exposure.
Okay. I think that everything that any one of us says up here is our opinion, or we wouldn't say it. I believe that the public deserves to know that there's concrete action taking place. I'm not sure that there is. I know that, we've voted for 4 things. We've sent some letters out. To me, it puts the public, we're going to go through this process now. If they come in and ask for an application for traffic, our staff has to go through that and check off all the boxes that the state says you can approve or not approve. We see it more times than not that something is approved that the public doesn't like because that's what the checkbox has said. So I'm really nervous about leaving it for that process. I would like to do something more concrete. Apparently we can't until 2024. I think that's a shame, and that leaves us vulnerable.
Excuse me, Chair, just to rebut real quick. What can I do for you? What else additional do you think this council, right now as the information stands, what would you like to see? And I'll make the motion for you. if you
Well,
so desire.
what-
What else would you like to see on top of what our staff and what this council has already done? I want specifics.
What I would like to see, the legal department has already told me that we can't do. The city of Ormond Beach has grown up around this location. The city of Ormond Beach has approved a lot of residential housing that's come right up to the border. I don't know if you were there when the funding got approved, Mr. Kent, for the sports complex. I was there this weekend. It's used by the public up there. It was packed with happy families, and the city invested a lot of money for that. So the whole area has changed, Mr. Robbins.
But be
It's
specific.
from a heavy industrial area to now a residential and an entertainment area. I think that we need to change the zoning on that property, not away from industrial, but that brings up a question for you. Is the fuel farm specifically, Mr. Dyer or Clay, an amendment, or is that part of the current zoning?
When you go to the I-2 zoning category, the first thing that's listed under permitted uses is any industrial structure or use, subject to 72-288, which are for environmental concerns in regards to air quality and those things, which would be normally part of the site planning process.
Okay.
So it is a very wide open category. Because again, it says any industrial use, and that's the problem that we face from a staff perspective of being able to put more definitive restrictions on it. There are a list of special exceptions. We've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb to see how this terminal and distribution center could be interpreted based on those list of special exceptions, and they don't meet those. So from our perspective, it is a permitted use by right.
And see there, that's a great example of the concern I just said. We have to follow the law. And if we've looked at the law and said that's allowable. So I think ultimately we need to change the zoning in that area to where the Halifax paving could still continue on, but a fuel farm could not, because that's why we have zoning. Things change over time, and that neighborhood has changed over time, and those people deserve to be protected. So Don Dempsey, our resident attorney.
Yeah, I kind of want to just reiterate what I said at the last meeting and to kind of corroborate with what Mr. Santiago said. We got to be careful what we say up here. This cannot just be a witch hunt against fuel farms in general. And so I think Will Rogers said, never miss an opportunity to keep your mouth shut. I mean, we've got to be careful about what we say. And from my perspective, and what I think we should be focused on is just the inherent danger of the location of the fuel farm itself. Whatever my input is here on the dais is that I'm not so much concerned about the fuel farm because I don't want to get in trouble with Bert Harris, but the actual location of the fuel farm, basically 1 mile to the north of runway 17, is what my concern is, and why I don't want to see a fuel farm come on the run out area of an active runway, because that is a very active general aviation training facility. And the most common, I think, Jake, you might back me up on this, but I think I was told, and it's been published, I think 65-70% of general aviation accidents happen during the initial takeoff, within a mile or so of the runway environment, because that's where your first power reduction is. That's where you're likely to instinctively turn back to the airport. That's where most people lose lift and they spin and they go right in. There were 2, like I mentioned last time, out here at the land airport, right within a mile of the run out for runway 23. And that's my concern. They had that big fuel farm fire in Louisiana, a similar type of setup on August 25th of this year in Garyville, Louisiana. And one of the tankers caught fire. So my concern is not, in fact, that there's a fuel farm going there, because it's a permitted use. It's the fact that it's located near an airport, which could be an inherent risk in the plane crashing into a fuel farm, could be a big problem. So that's where I'm hoping staff is really focused, at least looking into with the danger to the airport environment, and that being a powder keg because of its location. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with that, but not just the airport, the residential area, the sports complex. I'm not against fuel farm. I go to Buc-ee's. I try and go there once a week because gas is 40 cents cheaper a gallon than it is in DeLand, 50 now. I can see a fuel farm would help them be even more efficient and be able to sustain that. So I'm not against fuel farms. I would like to see it moved to another location that FEC owns. But there's the airport is a huge consideration. The neighborhood sports complex is a big one for me. Danny Robbins.
And Chair, just to wrap this up, at the end of this, I want to say I agree with a lot of what your concerns are, but I just don't appreciate or think it's okay for it to be portrayed that this board and this council is not taking this a priority, which we are, and that staff, but we are doing it within the law. If there's a policy change that needed to happen or needs to happen, I didn't hear a suggestion on what you're suggesting, other than your concerns, safety concerns, which we all have. But if we're going to make something out of this, I want to see us have real solutions on the table or suggestions, Chair, that you're thinking, so we can explore and see and put together. But if not, it going back, it's putting this council, when you tie us all into it, and then it kind of puts us down and staff down, like we're not doing anything. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's fair. But we're willing to work with you, Chair. I need to know what you would like done specifically, so we can cut through the.
And I just told you, I've not put staff down or anybody on this council. I think that we held a special meeting. We came up with 4 things that we should do. Staff has followed through with it. I'm still just looking for more. To me, this is such a big deal to the public that they need to see us doing every possible thing that we can, for the reasons that Don Dempsey just said, for the residential people that live there, for their property rights. It's not a condemnation of our staff or this council. It's me saying I want to know if there's anything else we can possibly do. I think there's some things that we're going to have to do after this to change maybe Florida state law. One is going to be on notifications, that they can't put a notification in a newspaper that nobody gets or reads. And I know staff is already working on that. They're working on a proposal that would be a huge improvement to that. So there are things happening. I'm just looking all the time for what else can we do to keep the people safe. That's our job. That's one of the first things listed in the county charter, is to protect the health and safety of our residents. So, David Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don, right on point as far as guidance. Thank you for bringing that there. And I just want to share with my colleagues, I guess it'd be a word of caution, right? Because much of the work that we do up here is we're protected, right, from a legal representation and liability, almost everything. But there are certain pieces that are not, that penetrate, I guess, that firewall that makes us personally liable, right? I'm going to use the case, I think Paolo spoke about a New Smyrna case that was recently dealt with, where those governing body there could potentially be personally liable for similar land issues that they violated property owners' rights. So I throw it out there because I want to give you the caution talk to counsel, make sure you're in the safe, because not everything you say up here is protected by this governing body. So it's happened recently, and I can assure you that those New Smyrna council members that did that are shaking their legs to make sure that that doesn't happen personally.
Okay. Just to put your mind at ease, I'm doing that every day. I'm talking to staff, I'm sending them emails, I get replies from them. I think when they reply to me, they reply to everybody. That's it for me. So at 11:59, we will adjourn. We have the first of two required budget hearings tonight at 6 p.m. in these chambers. And we will adjourn until then.